I call the Select Board meeting to order today, Thursday, June 15th at 7:08 p.m. A motion to open.
So moved.
Okay. All in favor, and this is on roll call vote for the rest of the night. Mr. Gito?
Yes.
Mr. McCrisky?
Yes.
Okay. Vice Chair Cavey?
Yes.
Mr. Carrara?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. On the roll call for attendance, Mr. Gito?
I'm here.
Mr. McCrisky?
Yes.
Vice Chair Cavey?
Here.
Mr. Carrara?
Here.
And I'm here as well. And online we do, along with Mr. McCrisky, we have Attorney Kate Federer. I ask that you stand to salute our flag if you're able. In accordance with Governor Baker's declaration of June 16th, 2021, granting certain pandemic-related authorizations related to public board and town meetings, and recently extended until March 31st, 2025. This meeting will be conducted both in person and virtually via Google Meets. The meeting will be recorded by SMAC Cable Television and broadcast live, and may be live streamed at www.stoughtontv.org. A recording of the meeting, transcript, or other comprehensive record of the proceedings will be posted on the town's website and or SMAC as soon as possible after the meeting if the live broadcast or live streaming is unsuccessful. Times are approximate and items may be taken out of order at the chair's discretion. So before we get started, tonight's meeting will follow the same format that we had on Tuesday. Also, I see a number of you in the audience. We want to hear from you, but we're going to limit the time and limit one question per person and try to rotate so everyone will have an opportunity to ask their question when that part of the agenda for public comments comes up. So, Mr. Carrara, did you have something?
No, go ahead. I'll make the motion to continue the hearing when you need to.
Oh, please do so. And then?
I make the motion that we continue the hearing and open it for solid waste.
Is there a second?
Second. Sorry, second.
All right. I believe you have to read the notice again, Vice Chair Cavey?
No, I don't think you have to.
You don't have to, since it's a continuation?
Right.
Yes.
Okay,
Just
we're
a
just on the vote.
I'm voting yes to open the.
I'm voting yes to the open meeting too. How about you?
Yes.
And
Yes.
And Mr. McCrisky?
Yes.
Okay. I asked our town manager, Mr. Coulter, and Mark and Paul to sit at the front table, and please, let's get started. Is everyone's microphone working? Okay.
Good evening, Madam Chair, and through you to the board. Over the last 4 or 5 weeks, a talented group formed a committee and engaged in a collaborative effort to analyze the rates, expenses, operational processes, and state funding available to us as we work to extinguish the $855,000 structural deficit in the solid waste program. Before we present our analysis, findings, and recommendations, I want to acknowledge and thank our committee, which included Mark Tisdale, Paul Jaffoon, Mary Jane Martin, Bill Rowe, Larry Langlois, and our selectman, Lou Gito. The work done by this group of professionals is clear evidence of what can be accomplished when members work together in support of common objectives. Madam Chair, as you and the members know, our solid waste program has operated with a significant structural deficit for many years. Previous managers have plugged the budget hole with subsidies from taxpayer-funded operating budget. That practice has prevented the town from aggressively building our stabilization account and has placed at risk our bond rating, which allows us to borrow capital at affordable rates to finance schools and public safety buildings. The need to extinguish the solid waste structural deficit is indisputable. The tools available to us are limited. First, we could increase the annual base rate significantly. That approach would be unfair to the residents who generate small quantities of household rubbish. Second, we could get out of the rubbish business altogether and privatize it. There is absolutely no appetite to do that. The committee didn't even consider that as a possibility. Third, we could close the structural deficit by utilizing the proven Waste Zero program, like more than half of the Massachusetts cities and towns. That approach appears to be the fairest and most equitable, in that we will not be asking low-volume generators to pay for high volume of rubbish produced by their neighbors. That third option is the one we're proposing to the Select Board this evening. In the presentation to follow, you will be provided data, information about Waste Zero, comments from DEP, and from the retired DPW director of Worcester, I know, who has significant experience with Waste Zero. Ladies and gentlemen, the committee that developed this solid waste program recommendation were guided by 5 primary objectives as we went about our work. First, to extinguish the structural deficit once and for all. Second, to minimize employee safety risks. The way we approach it today is very dangerous, and we've incurred many lost time accidents. Third, to meet our environmental obligations, to manage solid waste responsibly. Fourth, to balance cost with usage. Everybody shouldn't pay the same if everybody doesn't produce the same amount of rubbish. And fifth, to prioritize town-wide beautification. Members, I drive into town 5 days a week using 4 different pathways into town on my way from Kingston. I purposely take the pathway on rubbish day for that area. There's no reason for this beautiful town to look like it does on rubbish day. We can and we must take action to beautify this town and prove that we're a first-class community. This evening, I ask that you listen with an open mind, consider the data, consider the facts, ask questions, and read the material provided to you before you make your decision on whether you support or don't support this initiative. I'll close simply by saying that no action is an action, and that action will have serious consequences. We're going to speak to it later on. But Moody's, we had our Moody's call with the bond rating company 2 weeks ago. Unprompted, they talked about the structural deficit in all of our enterprise funds and in solid waste. They put us on notice. They warned us that if you don't make these structural deficits go away, your bond rating will be lowered next year. And they put it in their report. Now, what happens if our bond rating is lowered? We've got major projects ahead of us right now. Fire, maybe police, schools. If our bond rating goes down, our interest rates skyrocket, even if we can borrow the money. It'll make those projects unaffordable. So this isn't just about solid waste. The bond rating told us that you will lose your current AA bond rating if you don't increase your reserves to 20% of your debt service. Strike that. 20%, that your debt service, that your cash on hand is at least 20% of your budget. We're at 17% right now. We can't contribute to our reserve fund because we're carrying almost $3 million a year in structural deficits. We closed the structural deficit in water and sewer on Tuesday night. We closed the deficit in the employee health care 2 months ago. We now need to close the deficit of solid waste. And all I ask is, if not the recommendation of this committee that spent countless hours researching, evaluating, testing, and reevaluating, then we must come up with a different approach. Failure to close the structural deficit will have dire consequences. So with that, I'd like to begin the presentation, Madam Chair, with no objection. I just want to point out before we begin, I'd like to thank our colleague Gilda. She took the flyer that everybody has that they picked up when they walked in, and she translated it to Portuguese. So we've got a flyer for our Portuguese community as well as in English. So Gilda, thank you for that. And she did that on her own time. Thank you, Gilda. So we're going to begin this presentation as we began the water and sewer presentation. We're going to give you a sense of where are we on the solid waste program. How did we get to this place? How did we get here? And most of all, where do we go from here? If you go to the next slide, I think pictures are worth 1,000 words. You're seeing what is a almost typical week on the pickup route for trash. You're seeing bureaus, couches, household rubbish, desks, chairs. I would tell you, and I think DEP, who's speaking next, will tell you, Stoughton is one of the only communities within a 25-mile radius that the curb looks like that every pickup day. Anyone who's even slightly an environmentalist, who knows that we're now down to 5 landfills in the Commonwealth from over 100 landfills 10 years ago, knows that that's solid waste, equipment, solid waste, chairs, tables, counters, don't belong in household rubbish. It's a practice it's a practice that discontinued from the 80s on. That does not speak well of this beautiful town. But that's where we are right now. Putting aside for a moment the cost implications of combining trash and solid waste, which is why we've got a structural deficit, we're just so much better than that. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. We're not going to stop picking up people's solid waste. We're just proposing that we do it differently, and that whoever is producing non-rubbish solid waste reimburse the town for our direct expenses. We're not looking to make a profit, just for what it's costing us. And I would argue that probably, and I can't quantify this, but we did the best we could, 75% of that solid waste is coming from multifamily landlord-owned buildings. But it's being subsidized by the taxpayers of the town of Stoughton. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mark to run through some numbers. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Tom. All right, this slide that you can see on the presentation is pretty much describing where we are. It's a very simple slide. The column to the left says revenues and expenses. The revenues are what we collect in trash fees and things like liens. The expenses is what it costs us from the sanitation department. The other columns are the actual expenses and revenues from FY21 and FY22. We are currently in FY23. That's why you do not see that column, because we don't have the final numbers just yet. The projected FY24 is what was approved at town meeting. So again, if you don't understand how this chart works, the revenues is what we collect in money at the top, and the expenses is what we spend in the bottom. Each one of those years, FY21 and FY22, and projected for FY24, you can see the last row at the bottom says excess shortfall. That's the difference between the total revenues and the total expenses. So essentially, if it's in a parentheses in a bracket like that, that means we're in a negative. So every year, you can see we are in a negative. FY21, we were $748,000 in the negative. FY22, $740,000 in the negative. We're projected for FY24 with no changes, without changes proposed tonight, we would be $855,000 in the negative. Those costs, it should be pointed out, include indirect costs, things such as like health insurance for employees, things of that nature. Next slide, please. Okay, this is where are we? Current rates that are being charged. There's 5,262 regular customers and 1,554 senior customers that get a 25% discount. On an annual basis, so what you get charged every year, a regular customer is getting charged $254. A senior is $190. On a quarterly basis, $63.50 for a regular customer and $47.63 for a senior, and so on for weekly, as you can see the numbers. These are not, just to be clear, these numbers are not proposing a rate increase at all. This whole presentation actually does not propose a rate increase. Next slide. This shows you the history of the trash rates. It's essentially explaining how did we get here. Since 2002, you see the numbers. Essentially, since 2016, there's really hasn't been much of a rate increase. You can see there was a 25% rate increase in 2016, but since then, there's been 0% increases and then a 1.6% increase. And that's part of the reason of how we got here. Okay, that's you. This is you, Tom.
Thank you, Mark. Just a few bullet points. As you know, our flat rate structure that Mark just reviewed provides for unlimited, limitless curbside pickup. Now, we know, and this is a touchy subject, but we have clear, absolute evidence that people from out of town know that we have unlimited trash pickup of rubbish and solid waste. We've got people who have told us, and we've got people we've caught bringing material from out of town into the town of Stoughton and putting it on people's curbs. People have reported that. But people from out of town know that there's not going to be any complaints because there's unlimited pickup. That is a real phenomenon. People know that Stoughton is the only town that has unlimited curbside pickup where you can combine rubbish with solid waste. Second point, the town doesn't charge for recycling. Our direct expense for that is $87 a ton. In this proposal we're making to the board this evening, we're not recommending that our citizens be charged for recycling. We want to keep it just as it is for household recycling, because we want to promote recycling and reduce the amount of solid waste that we're putting in landfills that are closing every day. There's 5 left. If they close, Massachusetts residents' rubbish will be shipped out of Massachusetts, and those prices will go right through the roof. We're one of the few towns that are not participating in the solution to segregate recyclables from solid waste and from household trash. As I said, we're consolidating household rubbish with construction debris, furniture, and other large items, as that picture shows. The conclusions are obvious. We need to change our operating approach, not necessarily our rate. If we only had one meeting and only met for 1 hour, we could have fixed this problem simply by increasing the base rate to everybody in town and not done anything with bags, not changed our solid waste approach, not prohibited the inclusion of wood and desks and tables and chairs. We could have done it simply by a multiplier, increase the base rate. That doesn't solve the ancient practices that we've been forced to follow. It would only balance the budget, but it wouldn't solve the bigger problem that we've got in Stoughton that we addressed objectives to deal with. As you go to the next chart, I'd like to just point out a few points about our objectives. Everything we do in town government begins with establishing objectives. We start as a committee saying, what is it we want to achieve and how do we measure success? We did it on the healthcare problem, the health insurance problem. We did it with the town budget. Well, one of the objectives of the town is to extinguish the use of free cash in our budget within 7 years by decreasing the amount we use by $300,000 a year. If we continue to have these structural deficits, we'll never reach that goal. By eliminating these structural deficits, we will get rid of the subsidies and the use of free cash in our operating budget in 1 year. That impacts our bond rating. It impacts our ability to stow money away into reserves, which is what the bonding companies are looking for us as a town, as a well-managed town. To improve the financial strength as measured by Moody's Investors Service by eliminating subsidies, increase cash reserves. You know, the board has instructed this administration to deal with facts. Facts are friendly. Today I saw on Facebook, I saw it yesterday, that we spent tens of thousands of dollars to Moody's to determine our deficits. I just want to set the record straight on that. Moody's does an annual call with the management of the town. That was 2 weeks ago Tuesday. And we're called on the carpet for the practices of our, financial practices of our town. They are the ones that pointed out you can no longer use free cash to balance your budget. You can no longer accept subsidies. You can no longer use free cash subsidies. You can no longer continue to borrow if you don't have reserves equal to at least 20% of your operating budget. The gig's up, they said, and then they filed a report to say that. The call went well. They held our rating at a AA. But just to the gentleman who wrote the Facebook that we spent tens of thousands of dollars for that conclusion, we did not spend 10 cents. Moody's employs the analyst to interview us. We don't pay the analyst. Facts are friendly. The third objective, to improve roadway cleanliness and overall town aesthetics. Folks, I've worked here for 6 months. I've met some of the most wonderful people I've ever met in my career. I am so grateful to be here. But as I drive into town every morning from out of town, I regrettably say I'm embarrassed by the way that the curbside rubbish is sometimes packed 10 feet high. Knowing the people the way I've got to know them in Stoughton, I know it doesn't reflect who we are. We're so much better than the way we look. And that's why we're making the recommendation we're making. Paul?
Thank you. Okay, so objective 4, to reduce Stoughton's per capita municipal solid waste to less than half the national average while simultaneously reducing the cost for handling residential waste. Right now, over the average cost of our tipping fees, meaning how much weight is in the trucks and what we pay for that weight down at the disposal facility, averages over $740,000 a year. With this program, within the next few years, we'll see that be reduced to less than $350,000. Objective number 5, to substantially increase recycling while reducing use of landfills and incineration. Okay. So that we all know we need to do that. We're currently negotiating lower recycling rates and the manner in which we do recycling that will increase the overall efficiencies of our operation. Over the next 90 days, as you'll see in a later presentation, we will inform residents and educate them on how to responsibly recycle items in their homes they didn't even know they could recycle. And the last objective, to capture hundreds of thousands of dollars in state grants for our recycling programs. Now that we're engaging in recycling the way that the rest of the state and the DEP wants us to, we're now eligible to apply and obtain these grants that we were just 2 weeks ago ineligible for because we didn't meet the minimum criteria.
Yep. Next slide, please. All right, where do we go from here? These are the short-term action steps that will occur within the next 12 months. There's 6 of them listed on the slide. We'll go through them one by one. The first short-term action step would be to separate the household rubbish from the construction debris, such as furniture and other large items. We're going to manage both of those waste streams independently. So essentially what we're doing is right now we can take this table right now, stick it out at the curb with the trash bags, and we pick it up and it all goes in one spot, right? So what we mean by that is actually separating those 2 types of items. The large items, one separate waste stream. Trash is a different separate waste stream. 2, assess a transportation disposal fee for non-household rubbish, like the furniture and bedding and other large items. So if you need to get rid of these items, the town's coming up with a program. It's in the brochure that we've prepared on how that works. You can call DPW. There'll be an app on the website where you can schedule a large item pickup. They'll pick it up. There's a fee associated with it, and you can get rid of your item. 3, same type of situation as 2, but we're talking about large recyclable things such as refrigerators, stoves, and ovens. There's a fee associated with that, but because it's recyclable, it's a different type of structure to the fee. Obviously, it's recyclable as opposed to something that gets thrown away. 4, standardized 15 and 33-gallon bags for curbside rubbish management while promoting cost certainty for low-volume customers. The key to that whole statement is really the cost certainty for low-volume customers. So somebody who is using, not too much, maybe you're in your house by yourself, maybe just 2 of you, you're using low volume, so you're going to pay less because you're using less bags. A family of 6, 7, 8 are going to use more bags, so they're going to pay more. So we're not the low volume users are not subsidizing the high volume users. There are some simple calculations here for roughly what it would cost for 1 bag per week at $2 per bag. For a 33-gallon bag, you're looking at $104 per year. A 15-gallon bag is $1.25 per week, or $65 per year. For me, I have a family I have 2 children, young children, who do eat a lot, and myself. And if you looked at the belly, I eat a decent amount, and my wife, she eats okay, but. Yeah, so we got an average size family, and what I usually do as an example is I take the bags out of my trash can in my kitchen, and then I bag them up, and I can fit 3 to 4 of those in one of those 33-gallon bags. I'm usually, if I'm in the 4th one, I'm stomping. I'm really on it hard, but I'm getting that 4th one in there. And that's how much we use per week. If I do something special, then I'm adding a bag. If I'm going into my basement and doing a clean out, I'm adding a bag. But on average, it's 1 33-gallon bag per week for someone like myself. Point 5, we're going to partner with Waste Zero, who's here tonight, in transforming our waste reduction goals into measurable savings. They'll get into more of that in their presentation. 6, we'll have resident curbside coaching and education with daily inspections and enforcement. Before the program's enacted and while it's in its beginning phases, we will have an individual out with our trash people. Before them, after them, whenever it's needed to coach people, they'll be handing out flyers, explaining what the new program is, reminding people that the program's changing. If there's a large table in their front yard, obviously remind them, this is going to change. You're going to have to call for a pickup on it. This would be the fee for this. Things of that nature. So just kind of public education for the first, 2 or 3 months of the program. Next slide, please.
So, folks, before I get to the slide, I passed out a handout up there that compares Stoughton to, thank you, Paul. I left a chart up there that compares Stoughton to other towns in terms of what our flat rate is and even what the cost of the bags are. I think you'll find that in most cases, with rare exceptions, we're lower than all towns, even with this change. But this is not where we're going to stop. This is a recycling facility in my hometown of Kingston. It's the social epicenter of the community. It's where everybody meets 4 to 5 days a week. You can't keep people away from there. They bring their children, their grandchildren, their dogs, their ex-wives. They bring everybody there. It is the social epicenter. They serve coffee here. Let me walk you through it. You come in right here, and all of these charts here, all of these lanes, are for a different type of recycling. It could be for cardboard. It could be for plastics. It could be for steel. Almost any type of recycling you can think of. Once you go through there, this was when it was first built. There's all bins all around the perimeter. And those bins are everything from gravel, construction debris, anything you can generate, steel, bulky items, anything you can generate. You start here, you go around, you drop everything off, and at the end, there's free loom because people bring their compost, so the town makes loom and gives it away free. This is a state-of-the-art facility. When you're all done, you go up this ramp. There's 3 lanes, and you empty your household rubbish into the compactors, and they get crushed. It's our goal to build this facility, or one like it, by the end of the 3rd year. So not only are we managing the costs the best we can now, they're lower than other people in the immediate area. You can look at the comparisons. But our goal is to have this within 3 years and lower our prices even further, not increase them, but decrease them even further, and to do our part in the world to recycle and not bury waste that shouldn't be buried. So this is our goal for the future. Mark Tisdale's taking the lead on this. We're already getting plans from several towns of what they've already built. We don't have to design it. They're already designed. We don't have to lay it out. We're going to use town land. We'll find town land and we'll use it. So we're not going to come to you looking to buy a piece of property somewhere. But we should have this built. I had it down as 2 years. We're playing it safe to make it 3 years. This is going to allow you to be as efficient, as state-of-the-art, as responsible as we're all expected to be while we lower our costs. That's our objective over the next year, 3 years, to lower your costs. Now, I just want to set the record straight. It's been said that this program is about laying people off in the union. Think about it rationally for a minute. We used to throw everything in one truck, right? Now we're not throwing everything in one truck. We're throwing household rubbish. We're going to have to come back with a second truck to get your bulky solid waste items. So we're actually going to be visiting your homes more, not less. We value our partnership with our workforce. By the end of tomorrow, we'll have signed labor agreements with every union in the town. We have labor harmony throughout there. We're not looking to let go, lay off, remove anybody. We're not looking to privatize. We are looking to do this in a progressive, modern, state-of-the-art way, and eventually do this. 68% of Kingston residents use the transfer facility. The other 32 handle it some other way. This is something, and this will require all of our employees. Tonight, we're going to finish up our presentation with some very distinguished speakers. Let me introduce them first. The first gentleman is Mark Dancy. He's the owner of Waste Zero. Second, where's Missy? I saw her earlier. From DEP? There she is. Missy Holenbeck from DEP. And then Bob, is it Malin or Mylan? Moylan, who was the former DPUW director in Worcester. They've saved over $160 million since they adopted this program. He's now retired. He's got no vested interest. We didn't pay him to come here. He came here on his own accord to tell you about what happened to Worcester when they adopted this program and what the impact has been since. So with that, we'd like to begin with Mark. Thank you, Mark. Would you like to sit or stand?
I'd love to sit.
Please do.
Do you want to come up? No, thank you.
Missy and Bob, you're free to join us at the front table if you like. Would you like waters?
I'm fine.
Thank you. I'll take a water, please.
Hello and welcome. I ask that you reintroduce yourself so we can get to know you. Thank you.
I am Missy Hollaback. I'm with the Mass DEP.
Just please turn your mic on.
Got to push the button. I'm not coordinated. My name is Missy Hollenbach, and I'm with the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. I am what is called a Municipal Assistance Coordinator, and my job is really to help my communities in Southeast Mass, 44 of them, including Stoughton, to help them with their solid waste and the recycling. I'm kind of like your cheerleader. I'm the one that's going to help with the education and outreach. I've been through these programs, and I work with a number of communities, and I'm excited, and I'll talk a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mark Dancy. I'm with a company called Waste Zero. We've been involved in materials management for the last 30 years. We work with over 140 cities and towns in the Commonwealth today, and excited to share the information with you about how those cities and towns have done and some of the ideas we have for what going forward with Stoughton. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bob Moylan. I'm a registered professional engineer. I worked for the city of Worcester for 42 years. I was the Public Works Commissioner in the city of Worcester for 22 years. And during that time in 1993, we introduced pay-as-you-throw as an option to deal with our solid waste problem that we had, much like you're having right now. And so Mark has asked me to come and tell you of our experience in the city of Worcester.
So I think we have a presentation to go through quickly. So just a quick overview of some of the things that we wanted to talk about today. Number one, as I mentioned, I personally have 30 years of experience. Thank you. So I personally have 30 years of experience. Our team is very experienced with many municipal professionals that work with us, so we think we have a good understanding of not only materials management and solid waste, but also what cities and towns go through. Many of our team are former municipal employees who've been on both sides of these issues. I also want to touch quickly on the waste situation in New England. I think it's something that people, unless you're in the industry, you don't really understand how drastically things have changed over the last few decades. The program we're going to talk about today is not new, and Bob's going to talk about something he did 30 years ago. It works, and cities and towns that start these programs stay in these programs because they work. They will cut trash by 40 to 50%, and the tipping fees that were discussed earlier will go down by that corresponding 40 to 50%. We also want to touch on the fact that we understand that the next 90 days, if this is approved, it's going to be very important to educate the community, to listen to what people have to say, to make sure that we customize a program that works best for your town. So just to jump ahead to the first slide, and I'll touch on this briefly, the communities we've worked with all around the country. I mentioned the 140 in the Commonwealth, but they've saved a collective $2.2 billion and diverted 17 billion pounds of trash over the period of time that we've worked with those communities. Those are kind of the highlights on that slide. New England is unique in this country because of small town government, very interested local input from residents, and not a large county government like you might find in other parts of the country where you might be able to build a landfill or you might be able to site an incinerator. There are no towns in the Commonwealth that are going to volunteer to have a meeting like this and say, we're going to build an incinerator in your town or a landfill. And consequently, the chart on the next slide will show that in 1980, there were 300 landfills in the Commonwealth. Today, as it's been said, they were down to 5. And Missy may think it's 4, or I don't know, is it 5, 4?
You're correct, and I'm glad. You're correct, and I'm glad the direction you're heading, because I was going to be talking about that.
Okay, well, I won't. I didn't see your presentation, so. But the waste energy facilities, the incinerators, are another option. No one wants to have one of those built in Connecticut, in Rhode Island, in Massachusetts, in New Hampshire. In fact, not one has been built, only one's been built in the last 30 years in the entire United States. So when people say, oh, why don't we just build something, we can solve our way using technology out of this problem, it's not happening. And even if somebody proposed something today, the last one that was built ended up costing almost $1 billion. So I don't think it's feasible in New England to do that. I don't think it's feasible to have new landfills. And so consequently, we can do a couple of things. We can either recycle, compost, and again, some of the charts I'll show you, 70 to 80% of the materials can be recycled or composted, or we can ship, like we're doing now, 1.8 million tons already out of the state a year to Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Georgia, as long as those places will continue to take it from us. Connecticut recently had one of their waste energy facilities closed. They're all at end of life, and their rates have doubled in the cities and towns that were under contract there when that facility closed. So these problems aren't going to get easier as long as there's a lot of waste. You're going to have higher and higher bills to pay. We can go one more, please. So when I talk about the 140 towns and the 44% waste reduction, again, this is all about facts. These are all available at DEP. They take surveys every year. The towns that have pay-as-you-throw, some of the towns we listed, Worcester, North Attleboro, Dartmouth, Malden, Gloucester, Natick, Shrewsbury, Taunton, that's how much each person throws away on average per year, and there's Stoughton. And so the fact is that within a few months of this program starting, if you are to take on a pay-as-you-throw type system, your numbers will be down with those other towns immediately and permanently. So it's something that it happens every single time, I guess. So I'd say it's tried and true. The way to think about this program is to think about it in the terms of trash is like another utility. And the more that you use, the more burden and the more cost you're putting on the system. And in this case, use means the more you throw away and the more you put out on the curb. And so we're very used to having our water and electricity metered. We're very used to really paying based on what we use for everything in our lives. The more we use of it, the more we expect to pay. If we buy more groceries, we expect to pay more for those groceries. There is no buy one, get one free in any of these systems. So this system is designed to treat trash like a utility and to have the user pay a certain percentage. And the way your structure is, you have a fixed fee that pays for all the trucks going around so that everybody has an opportunity for the service. But the variable cost, how much of the service you choose to use, it makes complete sense to have a variable cost tied to that variable, a variable payment tied to that variable cost. So where does the waste go, and what is our waste comprised of? This is the what they call a waste audit that was done in CMAS this past year. And so surprisingly high amount of material is food waste, which can be composted. It can go down your disposal. Depending on your situation, you can find options to keep that out of the trash. C&D material is not allowed. It's actually illegal to go in the trash. We saw pictures of lots of C&D material that is not supposed to go in the trash. There are ways to recycle C&D material as well. Paper The majority of the paper, the numbers on that are paper that could be recycled. So that's all paper, cardboard, and those types of things that can go in your municipal recycling bin. There are plenty of textile bins around town that can all be recycled. There's tremendous demand for clothing. Believe it or not, it's close to 5% of waste. The next is household hazardous waste. Again, illegal to throw away electronics and other things in the trash. The others are things that are recyclable, plastic film that you can take to your grocery stores and get recycled. Obviously, metal has high value, can be recycled. Bulky waste, which we talked about, that again, the town has a plan for that. And glass, which sometimes there aren't great markets for glass, but it can go in the municipal recycling bin. So that's almost 80% of your trash that either shouldn't be going into the trash or could be recycled or composted. And if once these programs start, people become very conscious because they don't want to buy the bag. They don't want to pay for it. And what they want to do is they want to figure out what are the things that I can do with this material that are really a better purpose and a lower cost for the town. That's the objective, and it's ultimately fair. The other thing I'm going to point out that I absolutely believe is that a good percentage of the trash that you're picking up is from what I would call free riders, which are people from out of town. I believe that absolutely happens, and I also think in some cases it's folks that aren't supposed to be in your tax base that are abusing the system because you're willing to pick anything up. And so that's part of the reason your tonnage is so high. All of that will change immediately once there's a fee for the service directly related to what you're using. Touching on program design, again, the next 90 days, what we want to do is listen. There are different, in some cases we mentioned 2 sizes of bags. It may be that we want a 3rd size of bag. Some people only use 8 gallons. That could be a cheaper price to give residents more flexibility. We want to do outreach and education to explain exactly where locally people can take the materials to make it as convenient as possible. And we really want to just also make sure that people understand that this is super convenient. Wherever you buy trash bags today, wherever that is, you're going to be able to buy these bags going forward. So you're not going to have to make a special trip. I guess in cases where you don't shop anywhere near Stoughton, you're going to have to make a stop at a local store, which is good for the local stores. But I think the vast majority of people shop in town or near town, and those bags will be available there. Again, not going to go into all the different ideas you can see them on the screen, and we're open to, and I know DEP and everyone would want to help as much as we can in getting the word out so that people start the program with as educated as possible. A couple points that I wanted to just touch on last here. Number one, and Bob and Missy will both, I'm sure, back me up completely on this. Having started this over 100 programs, I've done this a lot. Everyone in the crowd who is thinking about what's going to happen, they're thinking people are going to throw trash everywhere. Doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. And again, Bob and Missy can talk about their experiences, but it's always a concern. And then once it starts, the program starts, people don't, over $1 or $2 a bag, do not just suddenly start thinking they're going to litter and throw their garbage everywhere. It hasn't happened anywhere I've ever been. And there are lots of studies that back that up, which we can make available. The other concept is that it's going to be unpopular. I won't say people ever, love it, but what they do is they see their habits change. They find out it's not that hard to do. It's actually pretty easy. You're paying for what you use, and many people save money, and they find it's fair, and they appreciate it. And the public policy polling did a study on pay-as-you-throw a few years back, and 52 or 79% of people found that they had a favorable opinion of pay-as-you-throw and that they were proud of what they were doing. It's easy for residents. You control your own costs. If you just go and raise the fee, you have no control. You're not subsidizing your neighbor's trash, just like you wouldn't want to pay your neighbor's electric or water bill. I don't know why you'd want to pay their trash bill. And once people understand that, I think that's one of the reasons that they like it. And they know that they're actually changing their behavior and doing things that there are, I think that most people think are positive changes in their habits. So with that, I will turn it over to Bob.
Madam
Moylan?
Chair,
Yes, Mr. Calder.
if I may, Bob, before you begin. Just want to make a comment. There's a lot of town meeting representatives here, Madam Chair, this evening. We sent out an email yesterday inviting them all to this meeting because facts are friendly. We know they thirst for information. I want to assure all of you, should the board vote this tonight, this doesn't go into effect till October 1st. And we intend to spend the next 30 days presenting the program to as many residents in town as possible. So if any town meeting reps want to call a local meeting, whether it be here or in your precinct, we'll be working with Waste Zero, DEP, and our own team to come out and go out and meet with folks to explain information to them. The second point I want to make, and I'm not encouraging it, but I want to make it clear, every resident who is diametrically opposed to this program can opt out of town pickups. You can do that if you choose. No one is going to make you do this. You're free to opt out as long as you give us a contract that you have made provisions for having your trash managed. So I just want to make that clear. We'll be saying that to folks. We don't want anybody to feel that they're under undue pressure. It's a program that we believe is going to really get our budget in line and bring us into the 21st century in terms of solid waste management and household management. But if it's not for you, no one's going to force you. Thank you.
Thank you. It's interesting for me to be here today listening to this presentation because it is like deja vu for me. And I want to commend your town manager for an excellent presentation as to what your problem is and what your solution is. And it brings me back to 30 years ago when I was confronted with the exact same thing. Let me give you a little bit of information about the city of Worcester, or Worcester. It's a community of over 200,000 people. It's 38 square miles. It's over 500 miles of roads. It's over 50,000 household units that we collected trash from every day. And the people of Worcester in 1993, my first year as commissioner, loved the trash program that we had. We collected 45,000 tons of trash, curbside, black bags, green bags, purple bags. It didn't make a difference. As many as people would leave out, and we collected up to 6 family units in a dwelling. So that was our cutoff. We did not collect from apartment buildings. We recycled 2% of our trash at the time. We had what you have right now, and it's the only thing, it's the one thing you need to do a program like this. You have a crisis. We had a crisis. We had a budget crisis. The city manager asked me to cut my budget again in 1993. And I looked at all of the places where we had money that of the size that he wanted cut from my budget, and the fact of the matter is there was only one place to go, and that was to our sanitation trash program. And I told him we're down to 9, this is like playing baseball. We've got 9 guys left in sanitation, figuratively speaking. I can't cut anymore. So we either have to get out of the business, some of the things that your manager talked about, or come up with an innovative way to either save money and or generate some money. And pay-as-you-throw became the option. And it was decided in June, the last budget meeting of June of 1993. We had a 11-person city council, and they approved me going forward with a pay-as-you-throw program. At that last meeting in June, on a 6-to-5 vote, And they asked me to get it ready for September 1st, along with introducing curbside recycling at that time. Pretty tall order for a city of that size. Multilingual, great socioeconomic strata. And when we went forward, and I kept the city council apprised of what we were doing and where we were, and it became the political issue of the day. And in fact, we had a mayor's vacancy that year. And we had two folks that ran for the mayor's seat. One, a very smart guy, friend of mine, but I would characterize him as a political opportunist. The other, a friend of mine also, was a professor of history at the College of the Holy Cross. The fellow that I characterize as a political opportunist, I think, saw this for what it was, which was a change in what people were accustomed to. And change is always difficult. And change is rejected usually. And he said, if you vote for me, I will repeal the program. The college professor saw this program for what it was, which was a way to get us out of our budget crisis, but also environmentally and socially the right thing to do to move forward. And he said, if you vote for me, I will keep the program. So we went forward, and our program, again, it was back in the day, and our bag costs were a little bit different than what you have now. On election day, the fellow that was the political opportunist had all of his poll workers at each of the polls with a trash bag over their head and signs saying, vote for me and I'll repeal the program. And it was a close vote, and he won. He won. We launched our program. I wasn't able to meet that September 1st deadline that the council gave me, but I was able to launch the program the Monday after Thanksgiving of 1993. Now think about this. He was the mayor, the incoming mayor. He got elected in early November. I launched the program in 1993, the Monday after Thanksgiving. The radio stations in Worcester that day canceled all their programming so they could send people out into the street, into the city, asking our residents what they thought of the new program. It was the issue of the day, is what I'm trying to convey to you. And there were all the same things that you hear anytime a program like this gets launched, including cost and illegal dumping and a whole host of fears that people have. Anyway, back to the program getting launched. Got launched at the end of November. He came into office in January 1st, but in that month of November, the data from our program was astounding. We had cut our waste in half. So we were on a projection to go from 45,000 tons of trash per year to 22,000 tons. We were on a projection of recycling from 2% to 38%. We became a national, not only a state model, but a national model for waste collection and waste programs. When he came into office, he was unable to get the political support to cancel the program because none of the fears that people talked about manifested. And actually, the citizens were very proud to be part of this program where waste was cut and we became a national model. One other thing, only because, again, the similarities between what I went through and what you're dealing with are so striking. We, too, were the recipients of all of the outside communities to Worcester. Those folks on their way to work in Worcester typically would drop off their waste on our curb because they had to pay in their towns to dispose of their waste. So again, we had the same kind of problem. Anyway, the program was launched in 1993. It is still there today. When we first did the program, the cost per bag was 50 cents for a large bag. It's now, I believe, $2 for a large bag. So you think about that, really not bad. 50 cents to $2 over a 30-year period is not too bad. And the people of Worcester, it's ingrained in them as to how to deal with trash, and they're still proud of the program today. So I didn't have any prepared remarks. I'm just doing this from memory. I hope I can give you guys some insight as to what we went through, what we faced, and how things turned out. I know that illegal dumping is often one of the concerns. In our case, I will tell you that illegal dumping went down. And you say, really, how did it go down? Well, I'm going to tell you how it went down, because before we had the program, we had illegal dumping, and I'm sure you have it here now. There are probably places in town where people can dump rubbish and they just drive away, and it's accepted. We were so focused on illegal dumping as part of our program that I measured it. I wanted to find out if anybody dumped illegal, who was that, how do we instruct them to do it the right way. And as a result of that aspect of our program and the fact that the population knew that we were going to watch illegal dumping or those that might consider it so closely, it actually went down. So I wish you folks well here. I know you've got a long night in front of you, but I'd be glad to help out in any way I can. So thank you.
Yes,
Bob,
Mr. Calder.
I understand that the community has calculated its savings over that 30-year period. Could you venture to guess what the savings were?
I know that there's something in one of the, I think it's in Mark's presentation. When I retired, which was 8 years ago, I calculated the savings. And at that time, the savings over the 22 years that I was commissioner was about $100 million. And it was made up of three components, essentially. It was reduced tonnage. Again, our tonnage was cut in half. So the fact that we were sending less to our waste-to-energy plant by half. Increased revenue because before that we did not have a revenue stream. You folks have a flat rate. We did not have a flat rate. And thirdly, we had operational efficiencies. We also, when we did our program, we had an agreement, and it was a stipulation of mine, that there would be no impact to any of our employees. And so as we enjoyed operational efficiencies, and by that I mean we were able to reduce and reassign some folks to other areas of our public works department. Those that remained ended up getting more money because we were asking them to do more. So it was a win all around, and I can explain that later in more detail, but it was a win all around for our employees, and you know, it worked out very well.
One last point, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Coulter.
Madam Chair, to the residents, particularly to the town meeting members, our first 3 months, should this pass, of the program is purely educational. Before we do a single pickup, It's purely educational. Every day there will be videos, presentations, working with kids at school about recycling in the district, in your districts, and in town hall. We will then shift, never stop educating, but we will then shift to inspection and enforcement. And I know a lot more than I wish I knew about illegal dumping in this town. I've got reports, I've got information from out-of-town people, both first-hand accounts and second-hand accounts. We have budgeted a full-time inspector. He was already in the budget. He's been in the budget for 3 years, was never hired. That inspector will accompany the trucks who are picking up on the designated route every day. If there are things on the curb that don't belong there, we'll continue to educate. We'll continue to knock on the doors, talk to the resident, how to manage it, how to handle it. We'll give them one of the brochures that I hope you picked up. But then I want to be clear. When we catch people illegally dumping after months and months and months of education, they'll be dealing with the police department. And we expect in the first month to capture no less than a dozen out-of-town people who haven't got the word yet on the program. And they will be prosecuted. And then that behavior will stop. So I want to assure you the team that worked on this has thought through every single element you can think of, and we've got a provision for addressing it. With that, Missy, do you have remarks?
Yeah, so 16 years ago, before I started working for Mass DEP, I was like many of the people in the audience here. I actually live in Shrewsbury. And Bob, I want to say, is a legend. Worcester's program is legendary. So I was a stay-at-home mom 16 years ago, and I was doing environmental things with my town. And the town, Shrewsbury, was exactly in this same situation you are. We ran a very lean tax base. We had very lean services, but we were facing structural deficits. We didn't want it to go into our schools. We didn't want to have to cut our emergency services. So one of the areas, like Stoughton and many other towns, we started looking into our trash program. Again, it was a free-for-all thing. It was stuff all over. You just threw it out there. You could put a couch. You could put anything. It was just a mess. So Pay As You Throw, they approached me to learn about it and to become kind of the champion for it. I knew nothing about it. So they gave me a binder. This was back before, computers. Big binder of things to study. So I quickly became an expert in Pay As You Throw and found out that not only in Massachusetts, in the United States, in the world, it really is the simplest, most elegant, and effective way for people to look at their trash and to bring the waste down. So I became the person that was in the education program. I was on videos, I was on going to the schools, I was in the front of the newspaper. I essentially became the most hated woman in Shrewsbury. I actually had people swearing at me and my 2-year-old in the grocery store that they were so mad and angry. But I'm going to tell you, a year later, people, again, I didn't even know, were coming up to me with stories and stories of how easy it was, how much their trash went down. They didn't think they could do it. It was just really amazing. And even to this day, 16 years later, I'll still have people telling me, oh, I meant to tell you that, we really did not think it would work. So it really does work. It's kind of like being on a diet. If you can only have so much, you're going to look other ways to getting your stuff out there. You have a suitcase. You go on vacation, got that 35-pound limit. You're going to start thinking well, maybe I don't need this. You're going to start looking at other ways that you can divert your trash. And this is one of the roles that I'm going to be playing. There's a program called Technical Assistance, and the town will be applying for that. And they basically get 80 hours of my time where I'm going to be helping them with the program. And it's just not me. You've got the collective mind hive of 8 other MACs throughout the state who are working with 155 other communities who've already gone through this. Seriously, any question or any comment anyone has, it's already been dealt with. It's already, it's nothing new and nothing unique, and it works. The other thing is, so one of the things that I can be working with, and your town manager alluded to these wonderfully, is there's a lot of interest in what we call diversion, not in trash, but other ways. So like we had mentioned, organic and food diversion, composting. There's other things other than just composting, but educating residents. I've seen this in other parts of the country. We're just teaching people how to maybe preserve their food better, like instead of letting it rot in the fridge or the counter, how to freeze it. Also multilingual programs. New York State and Syracuse has a phenomenal program of that, about food preservation and how to not be throwing it away. We're looking at the other thing no one mentioned, and I love this, is my favorite, it's called repair and reuse. So we really have to stop getting this mindset the minute you have something you don't want anymore, you just throw it out. And it's easy to do when it's free and you just put it on your curb. But if you have to start thinking about it a little more, like, well, you know, maybe we'll save this when John goes to college. He might need this for his apartment, or, you know, you might start thinking about put a free sign on it or whatever. But again, it's changing the mindset of people of rather than just dumping everything in their trash. The other thing is how you put your stuff in your trash. I think your town engineer mentioned about squashing stuff. Just a little things like that, like, you know, folding up your can and your milk cartons and stuff. But so there's a lot that we can do together, working with the schools. Again, the multilingual component we're finding is really very helpful. And then the other thing, when your town manager mentioned about the recycling center, I was super excited. I love going to those places. He is exactly right. They are the community heart, and you get to meet people there. The other thing is you kind of get to see what your neighbors are putting away, and so it's got a really good vibe going with that. So some of the other things that Mass DEP can help with Stoughton is we have a number of grant programs, and then there are some are outside of my DEP division, but there's other programs, and then there's federal programs as well. But the one that immediately comes to mind is we have a pay-as-you-throw grant program, where for a community like Stoughton, you're talking of having the bag program, where we will provide up to $20 per household of households in the municipal program. So, excuse me, according to your data, you have about 7,200 residents using the program. So we would be providing up to $20 per those households. So that would be a grant, and that funding that you can use that funding to purchase the bags. You can use it for education and outreach. You can use it, you know, for a lot of that type of thing. We can't use it for basic operational type stuff, but trust me, by the time we go through all the education programs and things like that, and then the bags, it does help as well. So we also have other grant programs that I'm excited the town has just applied for. Every year we have what are called recycling dividends program, and what we do is it's essentially a program that we reward towns for doing good practices and other activities. And our highest paying category is for communities that have pay-as-you-throw. And the reason for that is because, as everyone has said, it decreases the trash by 40 to 50%. Currently, right now in Massachusetts, we have about 155 communities. That's almost half the state that have pay-as-you-throw. Some communities might have transfer stations, and even the transfer stations will use pay-as-you-throw bags because it is an easy and fair way for residents to pay. The other thing is, you know, when I said there's 155 towns, more towns are still contemplating this. We're adding new towns all the time. I just heard that Sharon might be, your neighboring Sharon might be considering going to pay-as-you-throw bags as well. So again, towns realize that as the costs go up, and unfortunately that looks like what's going to be happening, is that we're really looking at that towns really need to start looking at their programming differently. And the concept of residents thinking the trash is free. It was never free. It was just never the correlation between what they're throwing away. So, but I just want to let you know, I'm here for you guys, and you'll be seeing me a lot in Stoughton, I'm sure. I'll be helping with all the education and outreach and whatever you need me for. Thank you.
Mr. Calder.
Missy, Mark, Bob, I want to thank you. on behalf of the board, on behalf of the residents, for sharing your wisdom and your time and your enthusiasm with us. I hope you can hang around for a while as we turn the program back to the board for questions and deliberation. Thank you all. Thank you.
Okay. So now we turn it to our select board members before we turn it to the citizens. Do you have any questions, initial thoughts, and communications?
Yeah, so I have a number of questions.
Yes, Vice Chair Cavey.
Some of them somewhat technical, so I just want to make sure that, just give Tom a second for him to sit down. So I've had an opportunity to speak with a lot of residents. A lot of the same concerns come up from various people I've talked to, and I'd just like to kind of, as best we can, go through some of these to see if we can get out in front of some of these questions. I'll start with the one that's most near and dear to my own heart. In the time that I've been in Stoughton, I've been fortunate enough to never be involved in anything that resembles a layoff. Anytime that that's even come up as a possibility, we've done everything humanly possible to prevent it, and that's something that I feel very strongly about. As I tell people all the time, I never mess with people's pay. It's very important that people be able to continue on. There is a concern that a change in our programs could lead to layoffs, and I'd just like to as I've expressing it to people, what I've said is the honest truth from my own understanding, is that I have never heard a plan that ever proposed layoffs. And I wouldn't agree with that. But I want to hear just a plan like the one we're looking at right now include layoffs.
Thank you, Mr. McCavey. I greatly appreciate that question. The direct answer is there are no layoffs, budgeted, planned, or anticipated. On the contrary, if we don't do a program like this, it's going to affect services, and it'll affect our ability to continue to support the program and labor. It's by doing this program that we get to avoid any conversation of layoffs. But let me be clear and direct. There will be no layoffs.
Perfect. And there's a similar issue with moving towards some sort of a privatized version of this. That's also something I've never heard. I've heard people have come to me saying, I've heard you're going to do this, and I always tell them I have no idea where this is coming from, because I've never ever proposed it, I've never thought of it, I've never heard anybody else ever propose it. But is there any effort to move towards a privatized?
First, I'll answer it directly, then I'll explain. Absolutely not. And I made the mistake, and as you recall, in my interview for this job, of asking about your plans with privatization, and I got a blank stare and a deduction of points. So there'll be no discussion or plan for layoffs or for privatization.
Perfect. Yeah, as I mentioned, it's important to me not to mess with people's pay, so I want to make sure that that everyone feels very comfortable that this will not affect them financially. With our current program, and just before I go on, actually, Joe McCrisky has raised his hand, so just so you're aware. In our current plan, the need to move away from subsidies, I agree with. We've done that with water and sewer. But there's an element of it I just kind of want to have articulated, if helpful. With all three of water, sewer, and solid waste management, all of them are financed. The revenues that we generate come from a fee, and if the costs to operate are more than we collect in fees, then the town budget subsidizes that from our general fund, which is just general tax dollars. So, as I understand it, all of these fees have some sort of a senior discount associated with them. And from what I've read from the program, it says a 25% senior discount for trash pickup. But also, as I understand it, there is no senior discount on your taxes. Okay, so by moving the expenses from this fee to pulling it out of the tax dollars, we are actually charging seniors more using a subsidy than we do if we go with a fee.
It's completely true.
Okay, so I wanted to
That's
be
great analysis.
clear of that. So I'll be doing some confessing a little bit later on, but I'll start by saying that I have heard over the years that our current program, our recycling and our trash end up in the same place. And this is often a justification to say, and one I've used myself, why bother separating things out into separate places if it all ends up in the same place? Is there any truth to that, or where do these things go?
We suspected, based upon feedback from you and others, that may be true. So Mr. Jaffoon audited the facility in Avon, which is a certified recycler. And not only are we going to move our business to the Avon facility, but there are a number of cost savings in doing that. Their unit price is less than what we're paying in Brockton, and that's not calculated in our numbers. We just found this out yesterday. And we don't have to separate it on a recycling truck, because when it goes into Avon, everything gets dumped on the floor, on the cement floor, and they sort it out from there. So if we separate it, they're just going to separate it again. So operationally, we're going to be able to use one of our regular rubbish trucks to pick up and not have to sort it into individual bins. So there's cost savings and efficiencies in 2 locations. I can't speak to whether the facility that we're going to right now, if it's true or false. It's like a closed fortress there, and Paul has called, I've called, we've gone over there, we finally reached somebody and asked questions. But at risk of slandering them, we think it's better to put Stoughton's business at the certified recycling facility in Avon, and we're about to execute the contract on that this week.
Okay, so whether true or not, we do not know, but going forward, we know that will not be the case.
Absolutely.
And so, just since you've answered that question, currently when I recycle, I will put cans and all a variety of things in one container and paper boxes in another. Even as somebody who recycles, I no longer would have to do that. I could just throw it all into one container.
Recycling container.
That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So next question is. Well, this was covered, but there's often been a concern, and this was something I imagined as well. When questions about this have come up over the years, I always ask myself, well, if I was not interested in doing a program like this, what would I do? And if I just didn't care, and the answer is I would drive around and throw all my trash in the middle of the street, right? Just throw your trash bag off into the middle of the street and be done with it. And good luck, Stoughton. I'm not going to buy your bags. So. What we've heard from other people is that what I was going to ask was, is there any, from evidence of other towns that do this, is there any evidence that actually transpires?
So the committee was equally concerned about that potential problem. We queried EPA, we queried DEP, we queried Waste Zero, and looked for data on incidents of illegal dumping to avoid purchasing a $2 bag. And as Bob pointed out from Worcester, incidents of illegal dumping actually went down because the corresponding education, especially with youth, was being increased on how to recycle, the importance of recycling. The impact on the budget was made clear. No longer were bureaus and couches thrown, and right now the couch is thrown in the back of the rubbish truck.
Yeah.
And landfilled. And when that incinerated, and when that stops, and we see the impact, as Bob pointed out in Worcester, almost in the first 60 days, saw the impact of the savings, but most importantly, the pride the community felt in the way the landscape began to change. We did this in the 6 towns I represented when we were in the legislature, and you could see the transformation of the town. You could hear the enthusiasm for people. You could see the children saying to moms and dads, what are you doing? That's a can. That doesn't go over there. That goes over there. And it has a quantifiable financial and environmental impact. So it makes sense to me now that I've seen the enthusiasm for it, that the incidents of illegal dumping has fallen. However, I will say, as the late, great Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. We know we're a target for out-of-town dumping in Stoughton. We know that. Our police know that. The police are actively engaged. Our inspector is going to be on site every morning, and incidents of illegal dumping is going to be called out, and people will be held responsible.
The very last question I have, and I hope this isn't a curveball because it really, there might be an extent to which this really hasn't been studied.
Sure.
But one of the issues that the town is facing with our water is PFAS within our waters. We're going to an effort to mitigate that, but it's a serious concern throughout the towns of Massachusetts. As I understand it, a lot of the things we tend to throw away and end up in landfills contribute to leaching into our water tables, not just our water tables, all of Massachusetts water tables. And it's all just, as somebody once described it to me, it's all, a big soda and you just stick your straw in and you kind of pull out whatever's there. But that water's coming from everywhere. With contributing to moving towards more environmentally friendly ways of disposing of trash and recycling. Are we aware of any correlation between doing that and reducing PFAS in our waters?
Peter says no. I honestly don't know. What I do know is that mismanagement of any waste ending up in a water supply has got irreparable and sometimes irreversible impacts on the ecosystem. And so I don't know the specific answer with respect to PFAS, but I can tell you nothing good comes out of rubbish ending up in the water supply.
Thank you very much. I have no further questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. McCrisky, I saw your hand was raised.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I apologize I can't be with you folks live. I'm away on business, but I really wanted to comment on the issue of some of the comments that were made by some members of town employees worried about jobs. And unfortunately, Madam Chair, this comment has come up not just now. This comment has come up in almost every budget season that I've been involved with in the many years that I've been on this board. I don't know why we feel that we have to go the negative route, and until we listen to the presentation, listen to the facts, and ask questions. This has been going on too long, and it's more of a political action than it is a realistic issue, because it's been said over and over and been questioned and been, told to their peers in the Department of Public Works. They're after our jobs, they're privatizing. Well, we know we can't privatize because our rates are better than a lot of communities, so they can't do the work for the same price that we pay. We do it, and we have our own trucks. There's so many things that keep that cost lower than somebody could come in, a private company, and do it cheaper. So that's never been a fact, and it's unfortunate that those happen. Like I said as well, and I thank the town manager and his staff, for having the courage to dig deep into these things. I'm concerned. I'm very concerned and very unhappy, Madam Chair, that there are people that work for our town and have passed on and not into other jobs that used to work in our town. They never told us with some of these accounts, in the deficit that they were going through. We weren't given the opportunity to discuss them, to put a plan of attack, that we could have done something maybe a little less stressful, to make the changes that would have allowed town meeting to be aware of these as well by being vetted by the Finance Committee. As we all know, that some of these things weren't even, brought to the attention where they could have been vetted, through the town meeting process. So, now we're really at a point where it's tough for us to not change these things, where the future of our town could be hurt by having our bond rating reduced. And as we know, that is the worst thing that can happen in municipal government. We have all these projects that are going on. We have the school department now looking for a new school. We're building a fire station. We know that we need improvements to our police station. And with a bond rating that's being derated, we could just put all that stuff right on the shelf. It's very unfortunate for our town that this wasn't brought to our attention. And I thank the town manager and his staff for doing this. It's going to be a little difficult, but I hope that, unfortunately, in this trash program, the restructuring, as anybody knows, I've been making these phone calls and I've been saying this for years now. Since my election in 2019, I've been consistently complaining about trash on our streets. There are people that have run their businesses out of their homes. They're hiding that trash in that. And this allows us to streamline and to take that thievery is what it is. It's stealing from the system, hiding commercial business waste into the residential trash stream. There are people that are doing it every day. There are multifamily dwellings that when the people move out, all their cleanouts go on our curb. We're paying, which is benefiting that multi-unit owner. That's not what municipal trash is supposed to be about. And like I said, we try something and hopefully we're going to be able to amend it, make it work better for our town so it's meeting the needs of our residences, not for multifamily unit owners and not business owners that are putting their trash out in at the curbside. So I look forward to just being quiet the rest of this meeting and learning a little bit more. But I thank you for recognizing me, Madam Chair.
You're quite welcome. Any other questions or comments at this time? Because we, to my fellow board members, we will come back and ask you again if you have questions before we close the the public hearing. I'm sorry.
Madam
Yes,
Chair,
Mr. Gito.
I guess the only thing that I would say is I've been sitting with a whole lot of very smart people and people who've been dealing with this issue and who've talked with other communities for the last month or so, I'd say. And they've covered a lot of territory, and I want to thank them for that. And I think you're getting a very good picture of what we should be doing, and that's all I'm going to say.
Thank you, Mr. Gito. And thank you for the presentation, and thank you for the guest presentation as well. You know, I just, over the years, long time, seeing how, I call them environmental engineers, how they have evolved. I remember when we just used to put trash in a trash can, and then we evolved to, no, you have to put them in a bag and put them in, and then put them in the trash. Then it's just the bag out on the front. And then it's, you can't put it in front, any more than 24 hours before your trash collection date. So we have evolved as a community and trying to be more responsive to this same idea. But my question is, and I'm glad you answered the question about layoffs and things, because I was getting the same question, and the answer is no, we need you, DPW, and Public Works, we just need you. But my question is regarding the prices or the fees for like these separate type of items, like the couch and the sofas, the sleeper sofa, and the laptops. How did you, I'm sure you did some type of analysis, some type of assessment. You looked at the market rate and things like that, but I must ask that question just to satisfy the curiosity in my mind.
Thank you for asking, Madam Chair. We did a telephone survey to the C&D facilities in right here in Stoughton, as well as the one on the Brockton-Avon line. Obviously, it's going to be measured by weight. The truck will come in and be weighed as a full truck. I'm talking about couches, furniture, and the like. And on the way out, it'll be weighed again, and then you're charged by the pound for that waste. So we know our rates that we're charging for solid waste, which we'll pay for disposal for, doesn't anywhere near cover our cost. We know our cost for the transaction, picking up a couch, particularly a sofa couch, and delivering it on a truck with 2 guys for, I think it's $45, isn't going to come anywhere near our cost, but it will offset our cost. We don't mind subsidizing that transaction as long as the bottom line at the end of the day gets us to break even, so the business isn't carrying a subsidy. That's on solid waste that'll be incinerated as a solid waste disposal. On what we call white goods, refrigerators, stoves, freezers, dishwashers, microwaves, and the like, there's recycled value in that. Not much. The market's gone south pretty fast. But all we're charging for there is what our labor is going to be to go pick it up and load it onto a truck and bring it to a recycling facility. So that price is lower than the material we're actually disposing of. It's important to note that those items, this speaks to the labor issue, not the whites, but the bureaus, the sofas were thrown previously into the back of a rubbish truck. So guys had to lift it up and get it up over that lip and put it in the rubbish truck. When we pick them up now separately from the rubbish truck, it's with a rack truck with a hydraulic tailgate. That's what Paul was referring to when he talked about the safety benefits of doing this. We've had, lots of lost time accidents in the past because guys and gals are lifting up these heavy objects, having to lift it 4 feet to put it into the back of the rubbish truck. Not anymore. We're putting it on a rack truck. So material we're disposing of, there's a modest fee in there for what it costs us to dispose of it, and a modest fee in there. It's one fee combined together for the men to come and transport it. We're not charging for fuel. We're not charging for the truck. We're not charging for any of that. They will be encouraged to get pricing from independent companies, and I assure you what we're charging for it will be a fraction of what other companies will charge them. On the white goods, we're only charging for the labor to go pick it up and a modest fee for the equipment to go pick it up. We're not charging for disposal of that material because they have some recycle value, and we're not charged for it.
Thank you very much. Let's open it up to the floor to our citizens. I see
Deborah?
I'm sorry, before we open it up to the floor, I didn't see.
Or do you want me to wait?
No, Mr. Carrera, I didn't see your hand. Before we open it to the floor, but in the meantime, we can get a microphone out to the audience. Mr. Carrera, yes.
It's funny that we're at this point right now that I spoke with another superintendent of public works, and we had discussed charging for the large items just for the sheer fact of what Mr. Coulter said. You're throwing them on the truck, and they were running them over one at a time and dumping them and coming back, which is a little bit ridiculous, and they weren't charging for them. So now we've evolved, and we got the trucks that can do it, which means you put them on the rack truck, you bring them back, dump them on the ground, use a loader to load them into one of those roll-off containers on the roll-off truck, so now we don't go back and forth with 2 guys, 3 guys in the truck. You got 1 guy driving a roll-off, and that's how you evolve into efficiency, and nobody gets hurt. But I think the 2-3 families is what stirs up a lot of the trash in this town and the mess. And I had discussed with the former guy the superintendent, when we went into the fee process, that 2 families should have been charged 2.5 times what the normal people. 3 families should have probably been charged 4 times, and would have defrayed the problems. But I told Mr. Coulter, I says, you know what? These people want to do it. You leave it there. You tell them it's got to go. If it doesn't go, then the truck shows up. We take it. We put a number on it. You send them a bill. If they don't pay it, you attach the property. Very simple. So when they go to sell it, you're going to get twice the money. Thank God my answering machine only holds 50 calls. And I got well over 50 calls because I wiped them all out and then I got more. There was a lot of ugliness on that answering machine. And I won't share what was said. But it was directed at me that, what am I doing to this town? And I can take it because I get blamed for everything anyhow. So this is what the group decided. I did some math, some things changed, but when you hear people say that everybody's excited about it, let's see. But I want to hear from the public how they feel about it, because you get a few calls and the threats don't scare me, but what are you going to do? That's, like I said before, they throw the spears. You can see if they stick.
Thank you, Mr. Carrera, for your comments. I saw Ms. Pat Colburn's hand first, and then I saw John Antervino's hand using my peripheral vision. So he will be second. And then I saw George Delinsky third, and then we'll just go from there. Let's go three deep. But I see you, Mr. Cohn, I see you, Mr. Ventresco, and I...
Madam Chair, pardon our backs.
David Walsh, we saw your hand too. Okay, I saw you, Mr. Cohn.
Pat Colburn, Precinct 4, 53 Gilbert Drive. I just want to start by saying it was really hard to sit here for almost 2 hours, listen to all these presentations knowing we had one question each, because there's so much information I feel wasn't accurate that I could debate, but I won't. I'll respect the chair and keep it to one question, although if you could just give me like 30 seconds to get there. I think the flaw in this meeting is you combined too much. You combined rate hikes, and I don't care if you want to say the rates aren't going up, the costs to the homeowners are going up. You're combining that with the need to recycle more, with the problem of illegal dumping, with the problem of multifamily homes. And those are 4 separate issues. But you've wound it up into one so that if we have a problem with the rates, it's almost like we're against the rest, which I personally am not. So to start my question, trash is not an enterprise account, therefore it's not a subsidy. So all this talk about hurting Moody's, I don't understand that. Finance Committee already started several years ago, shout out to Ed Trumfio, stopping the reliance on free cash. We've put more money in stabilization in the last probably 7 years than the entire existence of the town before. So the fact that the town is paying roughly 1/3 of the cost and the homeowners are paying 2/3, I don't look at that as a subsidy. I look at that as giving us a service that our tax dollars are paying for. So I guess my question to each members of the board, if you wouldn't mind answering it, in light of the fact that you just saved $2.5 million in subsidies on Tuesday night by increasing water and sewer, why is it you feel it's okay to add more of a burden to the taxpayers so the town can save money, but I don't have any money to save for myself? So that's the question I would love to hear answered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Long as it was, I appreciate that.
That's okay. As you know, as a former member of the Finance Committee, you don't have to be an enterprise fund to be on the radar screen for Moody's. If a department, which is a fee-for-service department, is running a close to $1 million deficit. So whether we like it or not, it's on Moody's radar screen. It's exacerbated by the fact that we used $2.5 million in free cash to balance our budget. Another no-no in terms of good municipal financial management. There's no reason for a town with a $130 million budget to be using free cash to balance its budget. We know we've got a subsidy in another fund, in the Visiting Nurses Fund. Town meeting spoke very clearly that they will accept that subsidy because it's helping our senior population. But when you talk about taxes to our residents, the people who are disposing of the most rubbish in solid waste are being subsidized by taxpayers. It's supposed to be a user fee program, not a taxpayer-funded and subsidized program.
Then it should have been an enterprise account, which it is not. So there is nothing wrong. I don't mean to interrupt you, but there is nothing wrong with the town saying we're going to pay a portion of that. And I understand about all the other subsidies, but a big part of the cost of trash are people costs, which is taxpayers. We have no say over whatsoever who you hire, how many, what their raises are. It's also the debt, the borrowing. And I know technically borrowing goes to town meeting, but it's very rare that people stand up and say, no, we're not going to approve that. So there's three pieces that make up the cost of trash, and I don't want to have to pay all that extra money when I have no say over the people costs or the debt.
I appreciate that. I will say this to you, that I'm sure you don't want to pay for your neighbor's high volume of trash either. That's what this program addresses. Let's keep in mind that town meeting makes these decisions. If there's an article at town meeting in the fall or in the spring to completely subsidize 100% of the trash program, and that's the will of town meeting, then you should bring that article forward. In the meantime, Moody's, who determines the rating of our bonds and our cost of borrowing, is saying this is bad. You're subsidizing a fee-for-service program that is supposed to be user fee-based with taxpayer dollars. It's just not, you know this, you were on the finance.
We can disagree on that. I don't want to keep
I'm not
debating.
saying it's my opinion, it's Moody's opinion, and they are a major stakeholder as to whether we can ever build another municipal or school building.
Are you saying we can never offer a service that is not fee-based? That's why I don't want to do the back and forth. So if I could just hear from the select board your feelings on charging additional costs to the taxpayers in light of the $2.5 million
One more
that
point,
you just saved.
I may. If town meeting, Moody's wouldn't have a problem if that was the will of town meeting to subsidize the solid waste program. Moody's would not have a problem with that. But it wasn't the will of town meeting. It was fiscal.
It wasn't put to town meeting.
My point exactly. If it were the will of, would you let me please respond? If it was the will of town meeting that we want to subsidize a portion or all of solid waste, Moody's would respect that. The fact that it has happened due to long-term fiscal mismanagement is what Moody's is objecting to. So if this body would like to prepare a warrant article to subsidize solid waste, you can do that. And Moody's will respect that.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're moving. I know it was a question.
She had a question to the board. I'd like to.
Yes, she had a question to the board, and unless you disagree, once we close the public hearing, all of us are going to be able to comment. But if you want to take another approach, then...
Yeah, just because it's on the table, I'd like to just share some information that I think is relevant and should be quick.
Yes.
So because we haven't voted on this, the question that I'm going to answer is a little different than the one you asked, which is you asked why would we raise this rate? We currently have not yet, but I'll answer why would we consider raising this rate, or just debate whether or not that's something we ought to do. That's the question I can't answer because that's what we're doing. But what I'll say is for people who are here or watch the meeting on Tuesday, some of this will be a repeat. I apologize, but I'm going to assume not everybody has. If you look at the rate increases for water, sewer, and trash year over year, you'll see they're not all identical, but a general trend of us mostly raising rates every year following inflation. Every now and then there's a big jump, or you see some things be zero, for a year or two. This all changed in 2000 when COVID-19 hit, and the board collectively took a different approach, and we decreased water fees by 5% that year, and we've held every other rate the same since 2020. We did this because there was a legitimate concern that moving these rates would affect people, and for the same reason we didn't want layoffs. We don't want to force anybody out of their homes. People were losing their jobs. Businesses were struggling to make ends meet. To the extent that we were able to not put an additional hardship during a crisis, we made the decision, to say collectively, I don't remember exactly what the votes are, we might not have all agreed on this, but collectively we made the vote to subsidize these accounts and to, in order to provide some benefit to people during that crisis. And that's been true every year since. So this would be the first increase that I'm aware of since 2020 of any kind. And so the question of why would we consider a rate hike is we are now 4 years away from that. The crisis is no longer present, and the environment has changed. And there is, in our minds, at least I should really only speak for myself, in my mind, I think it's appropriate to ask ourselves whether or not a rate hike of some kind is necessary, or in the case of solid waste, if there's we either increase, this one's kind of unique because we actually do have different options. Our infrastructure is different, where we can either increase rates or we can work on shifting the model to a more efficient process. So, as I mentioned, we're only deliberating. We're only talking about it right now. Nobody's made any final decisions, and any decision I make is going to involve input from the public. I want that. I'm going to value it. But that I wanted to answer your question directly.
Thank you, Vice Chair Cavey. Now to John Antovino. You were next.
Well, do you want the rest of us to answer or not?
Oh, would you prefer or wait until we close the public hearing and during our deliberation process? It's up to you.
Well, I mean,
either way we go, we're going to answer the
question
question
of each of us. So I think that it's appropriate for me to answer. I'm sorry?
I appreciate it, but I don't want to take the time away from other people. I appreciate it, though.
I will be brief.
Thank you, Joe.
But if you looked at the chart with how did we get here in terms of raising the rates year to year, from 2011 to 2015, the rates were raised at about 3 to 5%. In 2016, they're raised 25% in order to take care of the cost of dealing with trash. From 2016 to 2023, they went up 1.6%. So if they had gone up 3 to 5% in those years, we may not have been sitting here like that. The other part is that sort of answers the question of, well, could we have done it another way? Yes, indeed, we could. We could have just raised the rates a little bit more year to year. But I'll bet there's not a person in this room that has this amount of material out in front of their homes. But from time to time, people have maybe a smaller portion of this. They have one couch or two couches, or one table or two tables that get crushed and go to CMAS. We can halve the amount of material that goes to CMAS, cut the disposal costs for that, and also maybe help to do some of the other things that we seem to claim that we want to do to deal with environmental issues. And they're not really hard to do. And that will reduce the cost as well. So that's my answer to your question.
Thank you, Mr. Gito. I saw Mr. McCrisky had your hand up, and then Mr. Carrera had his hand up.
Madam Chair, thank you. I think Mr. Cavey pretty much spoke for me on his answer. But the question, so we saved $2 million. What we're doing is, ask why we're raising or considering this is that, and Mr. Gito said the same thing, is that we're paying our bills. We've allowed this, and it was brought up at the last meeting that Ms. Howe, when she was on the board, said that we can't continue to kick the can down the road. And that's been discussed, and that phrase has been used many times on the select board meetings about kicking the can down the road. And now we're at a position where we have to do something. We have to change how we do it and how it's paid for. And I do think that there's merit to this, and I still want to listen to some of the comments, but I just wanted to do my best to put my 2 cents in because the board was asked a question straight across. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCrisky. Mr. Carrera?
I'm not choosing sides here, and I'm not choosing a side against Pat Colburn, but I was on the board when we had to enter into a fee process, and we were told at that time nobody on the board wanted to open up another enterprise fund because as we know, they don't support themselves. So we went with the fee process. The fee process is basically still almost on the same line as an enterprise fund, because what we were told is what we collect is what you have to spend to deliver that service. So that's the truth of it. And do we go up on the rate, one big giant jump and break the backs? I don't know. I'm a little confused on some of the stuff here, but I just wanted you to know that when we had to draw up that fee schedule, that's why we did it. We didn't want another enterprise fund. We were trying to get away from enterprise funds at that time.
Thank you. And when Ms. Colburn asked that question, I didn't know what my fellow board members were going to say. I didn't know what their thought process was, up or down. So I know our typical process is to hear more from you, the citizens, and then we deliberate, and we still haven't heard from you, the citizens. So I will weigh in, but I will weigh in later. I am in favor of increasing the rates. I'm in favor of when you look at a business, you look at a business in totality, and you allow that business line item to be self-supportive, not to be supported by another line item. And from a business perspective, I think that's the best approach. That's a good business approach. It's the same as if you're a business owner and you have 3 McDonald's stores, and you have one McDonald's store that's making a profit, another one that's breaking even, and another one that's operating at a loss. Well, a good business practice is you don't expect that McDonald's store that's making a profit to support the one that's at a loss. You try to find a reason to make that McDonald's store that's operating at a loss self-sufficient, so it can be a continuing operation. But I want to hear more from the citizens and Mr. Ansavino, Mr. Walsh, Mr. Ventresco. You've all had your hands raised for a long time, and let's just go next in line, Mr. Ansavino.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair.
We can barely hear you, but.
Oh, well.
Okay.
I got my mic on. And I'm
yes, we can hear you much better now, Mr. Ansavino.
You know me, I'm not usually too quiet, but I think a lot of issues were raised tonight that are very valid as far as, separating the non-household trash from the household trash and so forth. Obviously not raising rates since, 2018 doesn't help anyone when all the costs, salaries, benefits, and maintenance costs constantly going up. You're not going to stay ahead of the game because you weren't at a profit to begin with. But be that as it is, like I say, maybe there's a hybrid solution with all these things that have been discussed. But my question is, if I heard correctly, and if I didn't, please, by all means, straighten me out. I thought I heard Mr. Coulter say you were about to execute a contract with Avon this week. Is that true? Did I hear that right?
Either next week or early the following week, John, yes.
Okay. So my question is, back in 2010, we signed a 20-year contract with CMAS, which would run till 2030. So how does all this affect the contract that we're already under with CMAS?
It really doesn't, John. We're going to continue to go to CMAS with our rubbish and with our household trash. And I have reread the contract with CMAS. We have minimum requirements, as perhaps you know, but there's also a provision in there that allows for offset for material that is recycled, which lowers the minimum requirement the more we recycle. So as the recycling number goes up, our minimum requirement goes down.
Correct. No, I'm well aware of that. I was part of the signatures to the contract in 2010. And I do remember things, but if I could just ask a quick one. Somebody had asked me, if you went to a bag system, pay as you throw, and like I said, whatever you end up with, either a hybrid of something that's been discussed or whatever, but if you went to the bags, somebody asked me, would you still be able to throw the bag in a trash barrel?
Of course. The answer is yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Anzarino.
In fact, John would encourage that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, at least it doesn't get ripped open, right?
And to deal with any type of critters or anything like that. I'd prefer.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Okay. I believe.
Thank you for your time, Madam Chair, and I know you have a lot of people there, so good luck.
Yes, a lot of hands are raised. I think Mr. Delinsky was next, Mr. David Walsh was next, and then I saw Mr. Scardino's hand, and then it's some gentlemen behind Mr. Delinsky. Thank you.
Yes, George Dolinsky, Precinct 2. The question that I have, excuse me, I'm a little confused. All choked up about this.
Take your time.
I plan to. There was 4 years that we didn't raise the rates, which was a management decision of the select board at the time. So we're living with that. If we had raised the rates, things would have been a little bit different today, but past is past. You're now talking about going to what is, I almost perceive as a foregone conclusion that we're going with this new bag system. Now, the question is, are we still going to be faced with the $63 or whatever the fee is, $63.50 a quarter? Is that fee still going to be in existence, or is that going to go up? And am I going to be required to buy one of the fancy yellow bags I saw in the picture from the supermarket? Is that what I'm going to have to do?
Let's separate fee from rates. The rates that you're paying per quarter right now are remaining flat. They're not going up.
Okay.
You will be required to put household rubbish in a prescribed bag that will have the Stoughton seal on it. I forget what color it is. Did you agree on that? Orange. An orange bag with the Stoughton seal on it that you can buy at any of the local stores. It'll say Stoughton solid rubbish bags.
So it's going to cost me $2 a week. Is that a charge that I'm going to have to pay, or is that the cost of the bag that I have to buy from a retail operation?
As you'll note in the flyer, there are two size bags.
I saw that.
Okay, one is a 33-gallon, the other is a 15-gallon. If you generate one bag, then it's going to cost you $2 for the large bag and $1.25 for the smaller bag.
Right.
If you produce 20 bags, it's
gonna be
a multiple of that.
Correct.
That's how we're trying to find parity, so that the small generator is only paying their proportionate their proportionate cost, and not the cost for their neighbors' 20 bags.
Right. So the cost of the bag being sold to me by a retail establishment, okay, this has been worked out that there has to be a markup involved because there's more labor involved. Is he going to give it to me at the actual cost, or is this a markup price?
You're paying $2.
Right.
Our cost on that is substantially less than that. The spread is what we're using to fund the program. The store, and you should thank them for this, gets no markup, no profit on any of the bags.
Okay. Hope that's right.
Thank you, Mr. Delinsky. I believe next in line was David Walsh.
Yes, good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly, loud and clear.
Okay, great. Hey, I guess what I'm trying to understand / grasp, I guess, is I didn't see anything that showed a cost analysis of increasing these fees to cover the deficit versus going to this buy a bag program. And I would think if we're doing this type of analysis of which way to go, that we would see some kind of financial comparison to be able to grasp and understand how it's going to save in the overall budget. And with that in mind, the other thing I just want to mention that in addition to that is this is such a big change to the town of Stoughton that from a townspeople perspective, it seems to me that the town should have a bigger decision point, that we either go to this program or we stick with the increase in cost. And I don't know if that's a town meeting thing, if that goes to a general vote, but I would think with this kind of change that there would be more involvement, input from the townspeople to make that decision. And I guess with those two things, I know I only had one, but I figured I'd throw both of them out there while I had the floor. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Calder.
Well, certainly, David, we'll respect whatever the will of town meeting is, as always. That is the purest form of government we have in the Commonwealth. And if town meeting proposes to do something different than the committee that has spent dozens of hours trying to figure out this riddle, then we'll all respect that. Having said that, I think you asked if we were going to break even by just increasing the rate, how much would the rate increase be? Did you ask that?
Yeah, I was more interested in 28%. I was more interested in seeing a cost analysis that would show, okay, if we were to increase the rate, this would be the cost to the taxpayer, versus if we go to bag program where the taxpayers will be paying bags, what would be the average cost to a household going that approach versus paying the increase in cost?
Sure.
I would think we would show that type of analysis so the townspeople would understand what the impact would be.
Be happy to answer that. If we go with the flat rate increase to the annual rate, it would be between 20. Where'd you get that? We seem to have a dispute here. I thought it would be that high. We'll get back to you on the answer, but the analysis we did at the committee level was between 27 and 28% increase. Bill is saying to us right now it's a 52% increase if we just increase the fee, the flat fee. So we'll provide clarification for that. I would suspect you're probably right, but we'll get clarification on that for you.
Yeah, I think that would be effective for town people to understand what the impact would be from an overall perspective based on which program they go.
Absolutely, David. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Scardino or Mr. Ventresco. Okay, Mr. Scardino is next, and then Mr. Ventresco, and then I saw some other hands. Yes, Mr. Cohn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Joe Scardino, Precinct 1, 303 Pine Street. There are things that I like and things that I don't like about this program. The success of the program is reliant upon a couple of factors, one of which is accountability and enforcement. Now, the manager has indicated that we're going to have a code enforcement officer, excuse me, that will be riding around shotgun on the trucks. I suggest that the damage that he's talking about is going to happen in the heat of the night. I live on a street that is trash alley. It was trash alley when I was building my house. Contractors were hearing that people were dumping sofas in the driveway. There was all kinds of refuse along the Cape and Reynolds property that abuts me. We have a lot of retreat properties in Stoughton. Unlike the city of Worcester, you can't see some of the street from your property. And a lot of this damage is going to happen at night. I suspect that the code enforcement officer is not going to be riding around Stoughton at 2 o'clock in the morning, number one. Number two is Mr. McCrisky made my point because he said for years he had been witnessing trash all over the town, and that's when we had a code enforcement officer. And I may suggest that right now that gentleman has a full-time job. I spent 15 years on the planning board, and just from policing zoning violations for signs, you could do a full-time job, let alone this trash concept that he's talking about. And number three is, I heard that the police were going to be invoked. And frankly, I think that force is currently taxed at the maximum considering the size of the force. So this program has some flaws in it because of the reliance upon full-time staff members that already have very heavy responsibilities in their own respective jobs without adding responsibility for trash enforcement. As I said, the properties are much different in Stoughton. There's some that are on the street, some that are not on the street. And frankly, I don't think riding around with the truck is going to figure out if somebody puts a piece of furniture on the open space area, that it's going to have a pedigree and DNA so we can trace who it is that dropped it there. As to the last slide, I'm concerned. I know what he's saying. I've been to this facility in Wellesley. I have not been to the facility in Kingston. It is a social mecca, but that's a facility that's going to cost us some money, especially to do it in a first-class manner like some of these towns, the genteel towns like Wellesley. It's a nice amenity, but I would like to have a basic service of picking up trash for $60 to $80 a quarter, rather than worrying about hiring furniture police and using the code enforcement officer, splitting his time up with riding shotgun and trash trucks.
Thank you, Mr. Scardino. Mr. Coulter, if you wanted to make a comment to that, but I wanted to, after you, Mr. Cohn and the gentleman that was sitting behind Mr. Delinsky with the hat. He's now...
Mr. Ventresco.
Oh, Mr. Ventresco is next. Okay. Yes, Mr. Coulter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to clarify the last question David asked. Paul had calculated the increase to the flat rate based strictly on direct cost. Bill calculated the increase to the flat rate based upon direct cost and indirect cost. That's the reason for the two separate numbers. So based upon the direct cost, which should be half of the cost, it's 27%. The increase to the flat rate, if we have to cover, if we're comparing apples to apples, if we have to cover the full cost, it's 54%. If we solve this problem by just increasing the flat rate. The inequity of that is the small quantity generator who's going to be paying for the large, who's going to be subsidizing the large quantity generator. Now, I want to address, if I may, some of Joe's comments. I know it's been tolerable in the town of Stoughton, but illegal dumping is a crime. It is a matter for the police department. It's not an additional service. It's responding to a crime, and that's how we're going to address it. The inspector who's going out during the day is there primarily for educational reasons. See, I believe that the citizens of Stoughton, if they know what the right thing to do is, they will do it. So it's education to go out and meet with homeowners, knock on their door if there are material put on the curb that cannot be taken by that rubbish truck, that residential rubbish truck. And I believe that when citizens are made aware of what the right way is for managing that waste product, then they'll do that. And that's the reason through the bag program, illegal dumping goes down, not up. So it's different, and I get that, I understand that, and if town meeting decides to change that, I will honor that. But right now, we've got a major problem with the way the town looks, with the deficit that we're running, with the injuries caused by lifting heavy stuff onto a trash truck, or at least the potential for serious injury, back injuries. This addresses those issues. I know it's new. And I know it's different, and I respect that. So I hope that clarifies it. Missy, you had a comment you wanted to make.
Thank you. So a couple of things is, when I look at the data from communities surrounding Stoughton, I don't know if it was highlighted, but the average household who uses municipal trash in Stoughton generates over 1 ton of trash. 1 ton. People said, imagine an elephant. And then what I did is I broke it down to something maybe people could understand. The average municipal household generates 50 pounds per week. And for a pay-as-you-throw community, that number is 26 pounds. So when you look at the number of what we call our tipping fee or your disposal fee, that's going to be cut in half. So when you start looking about the funding for that, that's one thing I wanted to point out. One of the other communities that I looked at surrounding Stoughton, and I don't want to mention names, they also have an illegal dumping program. And what I did is I ran some numbers looking at comparative neighborhoods, comparative towns all throughout the state. And then I also looked at communities neighboring you guys and that other town. And I was able to figure out if we shifted the recycling over a little bit more so it matched the other communities, they were generating about 600 pounds per household per year that were totally out of skew from other communities in the state of a similar size and within a similar geographic area. Where's that coming from? We don't know. But it was an anomaly. And again, we highly suspect, and they suspect, that they're importers of trash. The other thing I want to address, the gentleman with the enforcement. So there are two components, as Mr. Colton mentioned, the illegal dumping. So Mass DEP, we do have grant funding that the town has applied for, and that they can use that funding to buy cameras that digitally record illegal dumping. We also have a program within our enforcement program where they can again record it and it goes directly to the police. And so it is a police matter. It is a hazardous waste. It is a health issue. Trash is also actually under the purview in the state of Massachusetts of the health department. That is a health violation. The other thing is we have some really fantastic trash enforcement programs. And the shotgun, it was kind of funny. But the city of New Bedford has, I want to probably say, one of the best programs. It's very personable. There's a bilingual person. She often walks around the community. She loves her job. She can really relate to the residents. And not only is she like telling them what's wrong with their trash, she's educating them. And the thing is, if you can speak to a person, then they're educating their neighbor, then their children or their sister or brother. So not that an enforcement person is just not a police person. They're really an educational resource. They also go
Excuse me, Missy, what you have to say is very important.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But I have a couple of citizens that...
Yes, it's about time, yes.
So it was... Mr. Ventresco, you have the mic, and then Mr. Cohn, and then the gentleman that
Peter
was
Ventresco, town meeting rep, but I didn't get anything today about anything from you to town meeting people. Okay. Well, anyways, I don't understand a bureau. I could put a whole bureau there by myself, and I'm 88, and I don't get hurt. Two men can't pick up that same bureau and throw it in a trash truck. That doesn't. I can't see that. I could see maybe a refrigerator or stuff like that, something heavy. But okay, that being said, okay, so if I cut up the bureau and I stick it in the bag, they're going to take it that way?
We can't open the bags.
Huh?
We're not going to open the bags. If you choose to put that in a bag, we're going to take it away.
All right, are these bags paper or plastic?
They are plastic.
Plastic. Well, I right now, for years, I've been buying, I don't know, 30-some-odd bags, 48-gallon bags. It's like $14 and change. Why are these bags so expensive? Because they got the Stoughton logo on it?
Peter, happy to answer all your questions. The bags, the value in the bags are subsidizing the deficit. That's why we're not increasing your base rate, in spite of almost $1 million deficit we have right now.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
All right, so the bag, I heard you say, whoever you're getting the bag from gets the biggest part of the $2.20. The town gets how much for that bag?
Approximately $1.50.
Well, you get $1.50?
And that is subsidizing.
And that $1.50 is going to make up $800,000?
No, it's also the reduction in the volume because we're only disposing of and landfilling trash, not solid waste.
All right, so
we're reducing volume and we're raising revenue without increasing the base rate. We are increasing the fee for the bag. We just want to get our terms straight. The base rate is not changing.
All right, so...
Excuse me, Mr. Ventresco, we'll come back, but Mr. Cohn is next. We're trying to limit it to...
Wait a minute. You let some people talk a little longer, and then you let this young lady over here talk when she should have been talking, because it was up to the citizens.
Peter, if I may, Madam Chairman, a little bit of respect. The lady's here in her own time from DEP.
The
gentleman raised 5 questions, 5 issues. We needed Missy to answer those 5 issues. We're not going to just roll over the questions and not answer them. So when Joe raises 5 valid points, we have an obligation to answer all 5 of them. So let's please be respectful to the guest.
All right, I apologize. All right, now,
Mr.
is this eventually heading towards...
Let's allow Mr. Cohn to ask his question, and then the gentleman behind Mr. Delinsky ask his question.
Robert Cohn, 134 Kotlik Street, town meeting member. When Mr. Cavey said, I'm talking about senior citizens, everyone gets a break. In 1989, the board voted that people that had a realty trust are not qualified. It was done in '89, 33 years ago. I took a realty trust because my attorney told me to do this. I go up to pay my bill, and they said, I can't do that because it would happen 33 years ago. The only reason I did that, so I don't put my property in probate. Could take years. God forbid my wife and I die. My kids might be 60 years old before they get it. I would appreciate it. I will bring you that up. The girl at the water department gave me this. And I think that certain people in this town, which a lot of people have realty trusts today, are being discriminated about because we can't get the discount. I'm 78 years old, and I've sat with this for a little while, and if you want, I can schedule a meeting with the selectmen here. As far as the board, things change in this town, and he's absolutely right. This town looks like a dump on rubbish day, especially with 6 apartment houses. These are where you find them. I live in Kotlik Street, single-family homes, the barrels. I can tell you the guys right here, we don't have that problem. As far as the rate increase, and the town manager said it, it's been mismanaged for years. We had money to bank on, and it's time now that we take care of this problem and make sure we don't have it again. I don't want to look at the past. I want to look at the future. And this is what we hired people here, we do surveys, and we get the results back, and nothing happens. Something has to happen with the stuff, so at least we have some money to play with here. It's getting tighter and tighter, and if Moody, I know it's the bonding company that rates us. If we can't argue with Moody, he gives you the option, if this has to go to town meeting, it should go, but the responsibility is yours. It says that in the charter. And I hope everyone here has their opinion. And I hope we understand the world's changing rapidly. And I think the town is trying their best to move that in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohn. The gentleman behind Mr. Delinsky, and then the gentleman that's next to Mr. Cohn had a question.
Hello. Hi, Scott. Hi, Joe. Hey, Lou.
Hi, please state your name and address.
My name is Kurt Stankiewicz. I am the DPW Association president. To me, this sounds like it's willful negligence in order to ensure compliance. I feel like rates weren't raised in order to force this down our throats. I don't think that this should have been found out earlier, and we should have been able to raise rates accordingly. When we have people complaining about, stating a 54% increase, that's only $30 quarterly. Why are we throwing away our great trash system for just an additional $30 every 4 months? Why would we throw away our great system when we can literally take everything? I can pick up your bureau with my other two guys very easily. I do not understand why we're moving to a pay-as-you-go system. Any town that goes to a pay-as-you-go system leads to privatization. My guys are not in favor of this at all, and we're only informed of this Monday of this week. We are here. We take everything. We take everything for you. So please, I ask you, please to be there for us, and hopefully you agree with me that this should be a referendum for the townspeople to make the decision on which system is better.
Thank you very much. Please pass the mic to the gentleman next to Mr. Cohn. He had his hand up, and I saw the lady behind Mr. who? Mr. Garrett. Mr. Garrett, and I saw the lady that's sitting behind Fran Brutinelli. Yes, hi.
Hi, Jim Guerin, Precinct 6, 49 Donald Road. I got a little confused looking at the presentations here, especially the one from the Waste Zero. On page 2, they're talking about this is going to cut trash by 44%. And on page 6, it's I'm seeing this bar chart down here that shows Stoughton up at 800 pounds of trash per person per year. What these numbers really are is a distinction between trash and solid waste. And so I think that they're a little... It just seems a confusion that's in this thing here that shouldn't be there. If we're talking about solid waste, then everything, 40% or 44% of everything that Stoughton does is a bureau or a sofa or a mattress or something. That's what it looks like to me. And I don't see that as the breakdown on trash. Yes, I only look on my own street. So I don't understand why people are claiming there's going to be a big decrease in trash, which makes, of course, you would equivalent that to a 44% decrease in your trash fees. Well, it's not really that way. You're going to be moving the trash from trash fees over into solid waste fees. I think we're going to end up spending more money for this program than is being presented. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, our town clerk, Mrs. Carrera. Yes. Miss Waste Zero wanted to comment. He has his microphone.
Sir, just to answer very quickly, because I know we're trying to go fast. Page 8 in the chart shows the 80% of goods that can be taken out of the waste stream. They're not all, only 5.5% of it is bulky. The rest of it is all recyclable or compostable material that could be taken out, and that's where the savings comes from. And to address just a previous question, in Worcester, they still have public officials collecting the trash 30 years later.
Thank you. Mr. Laurie was next, and then the lady in red behind Mrs. Brutinelli.
David Lurie, 18 Robinette Road, and thank you, Madam Chair. I remember it was at least 20 years ago, we went to recycling. We put a sticker on our can, and we get the short square barrel, and that takes care of paper goods. So we're already pretty good at recycling, separating our trash to do it. And so we did that back then, because I remember, because it was going to lower our costs because there was a buyer of those recycled goods. Eventually, we lost a buyer, and that's why we didn't see the savings from it. And I know that there's like these closed wall fortresses and hard to see really where our trash goes. I know that one goes to the dump and another truck goes to some transfer station, and God only knows where it's going. But you could tell what the cost of taking your trash is, because on one hand, you're either lowering your cost because somebody's buying it, or it's just being treated like another can of trash, and you're paying the full price for even the recycled. So for years and years and years, we've been paying full boat, even though we're going through all the trouble of separating, okay? So I don't think this town has a problem with recycling. And philosophically, even if I go all in with the pay per throw, just looking through like the logic of that, I see a lot of great efficiencies with this 44% of reduction. And then we're also collecting more money on top of the rates that we already pay. I think that if your board, through you, Madam Chair, is to say, why aren't you looking at taking a little bit of that efficiency and giving it back to us on the rates we're paying? Then it's more palatable. You just take, instead of 44%, only take 40%, and that 4% give us back to buy our bags with. Why are we paying the full price on the rates at the same time you're adding on when we're having such a great efficiency in lowering our cost altogether? In other words, what I'm trying to say is, I don't want to pay 100% of the reduction of free cash dependency through my trash bill. I don't mind helping reduce the dependency on free cash, but not at 100% of my trash. Take a little bit off of it and make it palatable. Maybe it would take the sting out of what you're hearing in the audience here. Please just think about like the sensitivity of like piling on those extra costs, and think about, can't we be more creative with how we're doing it? That's my only comment.
David, you raised some very good points. Just so you know, as the committee deliberated, we were at $3 a bag to get to break even, and lowered it to $2 a bag for those very reasons. Our goal and the directive we received from the board is to come as close as we can to our best guess based upon the data we have as to how we get to break even. The money we make on the bags removes up to 90% of our deficit. 90% of the structural deficit. The other 10% we're making up in efficiencies, not throwing that bureau that Peter can lift with one guy by himself. It takes us 3 guys. So 90% of the savings is coming from the value we make from the bags. The second point I want to make is that we actually pay more for recyclable materials than we pay for rubbish, because that's where the market has gone. We still fully support recycling because we're painfully aware there's no place to send rubbish anymore. We're down to 5 last week, 4 this week, landfills, down from 200 10 years ago. So you talk about cost increases. A year from now, we're hoping because of waste minimization, increases in recycling, we're going to be able to lower our costs once we've got a year of data. We know we won't be increasing our costs. We hope to lower our costs. Now, that's going to be happening at the same time that we reduce our volume. And that's going to be very important, because before this decade is out, I guarantee you, Massachusetts will be shipping its rubbish outside of Massachusetts, and you're going to see costs triple. So if we don't do what's called waste minimization now, we're going to pay dearly. And Ms. Howe, who said you're going to be shocked years from now, had no idea at the time that these landfills are going to close. So we have to get into the 21st century and how we manage our waste, or the cost is going to be staggering in years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coulter. Yes, the lady behind Mrs. Brutinelli.
Debbie Menz, 64 Simpson Street.
Can you please stand? Sure. We can barely. Your name and address, please.
Debbie Menz, 64 Simpson Street. Talk about illegal dumping. The other end of Simpson Street, across from Canton Street. They put Jersey barriers up. They're still dumping there. So I'm not sure if there's a process for that, if we need to contact Stoughton PD on that, or if we get those cameras that was mentioned. So that's the first thing. My second thing, I just needed clarification. So we're still paying the rate. So say my rate's $2.54, and if I use one bag a week, that's $104 a year. So I'm adding $2.54 plus $104, and that's if I use one bag. Double that if most likely I'm going to have 2 bags. My elderly neighbor, 98 years old, pays $190, and she's going to pay $65 more a year for the small bag. So is that right? So you're paying your fee and then the fee for the bag?
Yes.
For less trash. So if we kept it how it was, okay, so I'm already going to be paying $250 plus another probably $200 a year. So I'm at 4 something. So what would it cost us? Like for the elderly people, they're not using the trash. I'm using the trash. I'm recycling. Am I buying a bag for my recycling too? Or am I going in the bucket? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
You raise a very good point.
How much is this going to cost me? And why can't we keep it as it is? You know, I use trash. I have trash. I expect to pay a little bit more than my 98-year-old neighbor, but I don't want to pay for somebody dumping their stuff. There's got to be
Thank you very much.
a happy medium between all this.
We're taking your comments into consideration, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Paul, yes, go ahead.
That's what this program is designed for, ma'am, that your 98-year-old elderly neighbor doesn't pay as much as you.
But she's going to pay the $190 plus another $65 for the bag, right?
And you're going to pay $254 plus another $208, you said.
Right.
So you are paying more than your
I
elderly.
am paying more, but she's 98. Why is she paying? It just doesn't seem fair that she should be paying for to almost $300, right?
Thank you. We're taking your comments in consideration. Moving right along, and I believe Mr. Ventresco was next. I see the young lady I can barely see in the corner, back row, and then on the middle aisle with the glasses. I can't see. And then gentleman with the shirt.
All right, Peter Ventresco again. I got a bunch of questions, but apparently you don't want me to
before you start, I just want to
ask too many, so I'll just stick with one.
Mr. Ventresco, Apologies. But there's some people talking in the audience, and it's very hard for me to hear the current speaker. So I'm just going to ask that if you're not speaking, to please allow the current speakers the courtesy of allowing them to talk. Thank you very much, sir.
I didn't get what you said.
There are some people talking in the audience, and I'm not able to hear you because there's other conversations going on.
All right. So the 6,706 single-family homes in Stoughton. So if you gave them a one-time flat fee jump of $115 a year, that would give you $804,000, $720, and that would break down to about $35 a quarter. That would get you out of this mess as far as the deficit goes and leave the trash the way it is.
Not if it's a one-time fee, like you said, it won't.
Huh? Well, then after that, you go up whatever.
Oh, you said a one-time fee.
Well, I'm sorry, but that will get you out of the deficit, and it breaks down to what they say, $25 a month, or $35 a quarter on your trash bill, and everything stays the way it is, and everybody will be happy. Because I use one bag, a 48-gallon bag, and when I have company or holidays, I can go into 3 full 48-gallon bags. So, and I would, pay as you throw. It's not fair for the person who uses one bag, but for years I used a bunch of bags when I was raising my family. Now I'm down to one, but that's just the way life is. But if the town is generous and thinks of the elderly, well, they can give the elderly the break still.
Thank you, Mr. Ventresco. The young lady in the back. Oh, Stephanie, you gave her the microphone.
Hi, Christine Iacobucci.
Would you mind standing up?
Oh, sure.
Oh, well, Ms. Yamaguchi, I couldn't see that.
That's fine. Christine Iacobucci, 139 Chemung Street. I have 2 super quick questions. One, do we anticipate more recycling pickup? Like right now, it's every 2 weeks, and now we're going to have a ton more recycling, right, to store at our houses. Is it going to come every week?
We don't anticipate more frequent pickups. We anticipate more volume. So adding another route, most likely.
So not weekly, just keeping it bi-weekly? Okay. And then I work with homebound residents, and I'm just curious as to how those homebound residents, mostly seniors, are going to have access to the bags.
They're going to have the same access they have now to how they get their bags in a retail outlet.
Okay.
Thank you very much for those questions. And the young lady in the middle aisle with the glasses, yes.
Madam Chairman,
oh, yes, Mr. Carrera.
Through you to Mr. Jaffoum, maybe some of those could be available at the senior center and they could distribute them too?
Sure, absolutely something we would look at, of course.
Yes, we can hear you. Mm-hmm.
Linda Curtin, Precinct 6, 25 Merrill Street. So I understand we need to make changes, but why do we have to go as a pay as you throw, and with keeping the rate, maybe increasing it a little bit and paying more for the solid waste that we have? So if you have a table to throw out, get a sticker, make a cost for that sticker. $5, $10, whatever it may be, depending on what it is, which will help increase the amount of revenue that you're going to get without having to go. I mean, you want to get rid of that solid waste somehow, whether we go as pay as you throw, you're going to get rid of it somehow with these costs. So why not get rid of the pay as you throw, but make it more accessible to do the solid waste with a sticker when they pick it up, go to pick it up. If there's no sticker, they don't pick it up.
Madam Chair, may I answer that?
Yes, Mr. Coulter.
Thank you for that question. You've really thought this through, and I want you to know that we were sequestered in that room running every scenario we could run. We didn't, pay-as-you-throw was something I was opposed to from the beginning, but every time we ran the numbers and ran the numbers and ran numbers, we kept coming back to pay-as-you-throw, which Paul does in his community, Mark does in his community. Most of the people at Town Hall who live out of Stoughton do in their communities. The only thing I want to respond to is if we get rid of pay-as-you-throw, which eliminates 90% of our deficit, we're not going to be increasing our base annual rate a little bit. We're going to be increasing it a lot more than $2 a bag.
Yeah, but at $2 a bag, my household is my husband and I. My husband is a senior, so we still pay the full rate. He does not take the senior discount. So you're paying another $400 plus you're going to pay for all of your solid waste to get disposed of on top of it, which is going to cost even more money. So now you're looking at if you got tables to throw or, you know, something that can't go to the recyclable place that's only open one day a week that you can only bring certain things to. That's another issue. There's got to be an easier way. The pay-as-you-throw, I've done it before when I lived in East Bridgewater. It doesn't work. And I'm opposed.
Yes, the gentleman with the on the right, my right.
Stephanie, thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Good evening, Nathan Cleveland, 527 Plain Street. I just wanted to say that I appreciate that there were folks who took the time to look into something like this as an option. I think the program that's been presented is a good program and includes a lot of things that I myself suggested years ago as options to help address the structural deficit in solid waste in one way or another. I think it's important to recognize that these programs are good programs so long as the promises made around labor remaining intact are kept. I think that's an important critical element of it. My question is not of a financial nature, to change it up a little bit. One of the things that I'm seeing is if this program goes forward, people will likely be looking for ways to reduce the amount of waste that they're putting into the bags to keep those costs down, which will then lead to an increase in interest in our recycling program, as well as options for textile recycling, composting, and other services that people will be looking for to properly dispose of things that they no longer can and probably should not have been putting in their trash. So we've talked a little bit about recycling here as part of the presentations, but I was wondering if there were any comments around how we might make sure residents have both the information and the access to those additional services to help reduce the amount of things that they're putting in their trash every week. Thank you.
I really appreciate your perspective on that. If we have to increase the frequency of picking up recycling, we'll do that. Here's the good news. By switching to Avon, I think I may have mentioned this earlier, we don't have to use a recycling truck. We can use a regular trash truck because they segregate and separate in their warehouse by hand, paper from plastics, from metals, from cans, and so forth. So we're going to save a lot of time to offset in labor, to offset the increase we're going to have in volume of recycling. At the end of the day, it wouldn't make any sense, and I know you'll agree with this, to just focus on saving money. I mean, that's important. But as I say, entering the 21st century with regard to our commitment to recycling and our avoidance of landfilling solid waste, which 2, 3, 5 years from now is going to go out of Massachusetts and triple the cost of solid waste disposal, would be foolish. So we are anticipating an increase in recycling. We're lowering our price with Avon by over 10%. It's going to offset the increase in labor for recycling. the whole process will. But again, the operational changes with regard to segregation are going to save us a lot of money. Did you want to do that analysis? Mark has got some analysis. This is the engineer in him. He's been running some numbers. But I think we've got an amended motion before you do that.
Madam.
Before we do that, Mr. Carrera.
Yeah. If we're going to save all this money that you're talking about, like with the recycling goes in, we change, is there a way to lower the base fee that we are going to pay that isn't, like, wouldn't change? Would that be able to be reduced by, say, because you're going to save some money someplace, would you get 5%, 10% off that rate? Would that be able to, and I don't mean take it off the two families and stuff, because I don't think that's a good thing there. But I agree with the lady in the back who spoke, who said that we'll be picking up savings too, because we're going to put a number on all the solid stuff and the heavy stuff. So there's got to be, like, to defray the bag expenditure if we go that way.
Sure. To you, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Cole.
There are a lot of moving parts, Mr. Carrera, on how we came to these calculations. If the board wished to reduce the flat fee by 5%, not that you need our concurrence, but we would certainly support that. I think it would make some sense. We don't know precisely where we end up at the end of the year, but if it makes more sense to reduce the base rate by 5%, I think I speak for the committee that we would support that.
I agree with that. We had talked about that is a possibility when we were dealing with this before. We didn't know what the numbers might be, but I think your idea is a very good one.
Yeah, I was just writing a bunch of scrawl down here, and I was trying to figure out whether it was 5 or 10, but
I think that's a great idea. Could I answer this, the fellow with the checkered shirt's question in a little different manner? There are other companies that put bins in towns and will be able to take care of textiles and toys and other things, and we could work with them, give them the opportunity on some of the public lands that we have to put those bins in schools and in other places.
We actually already have some of those in place at every single local school.
But I think if we publicize that more,
sure,
that would be helpful. So I agree with the point that you made.
Thank you.
Mr. Scard, before Town Manager Coulter. Oh, okay.
Our resident engineer has done some analysis. I think this will be some good news. He's recommending, and I've never questioned his numbers, that we drop the base rate to 240, which is more than 5%.
Joe Scardino, Precinct 1, 303 Pine Street. I didn't mention this before, but to mitigate some of the burden and negativity of a program being such a radical program being instituted, if that be the will of the board, I was going to suggest DPW already does this. I believe a couple months of the year they put large recycling bins at Gay Street to collect leaves, that we consider having a few large 200-yard dumpsters so that at the beginning of this program, so if people want to schedule doing cleanouts, so that, again, this doesn't come as a, gee, I should have done it yet last year kind of deal, that we offer that as a free service to have the dumpsters there for a period of time at the initial part of this program, if that's going to be voted on favorably by the board, and publicize the heck out of it as a way to kind of give a compromise and a spoonful of sugar with the harsh medicine of changing 30 years of practices in this town. If you're going to go in that direction for the reasons that were given, my suggestion is that you consider using those 20-yard bins for a short period of time as a compromise measure.
Thank you very much, Mr. Scardino, for your comment. And I know Ms. Walsh is next, and the gentleman on the back row is after her. But I just wanted clarification when Mr. Coulter said reducing to $240. I said, okay, well, where was that number? Because what was the reference point, was the starting point? So I had to actually ask, but if I had the question, I'm sure you did too. So in the presentation where it says annually $254, that's what he's proposing to reduce to $240. Or if you have the trifold brochure, middle section where it says rate sheet annual, single family home, $254 for 1 year, that the new proposal is reducing that to $240. So just as a reference point. Mr. Mark Tisdale, you had a comment, and then Mrs. Walsh.
Thank you very much. Just for a little comparison, very simple, and by the way, I'm not a resident engineer. That means I'm only here for part-time. I've been here for 13 years, so Mr. Coulter referred me as a resident engineer. A comparison of the bag, if you were going to use one bag per week, and I can only go by my own experience with 2 kids, 9 and 12, in the family I described to you, I get away with 1 bag per week, the 33-gallon bag. I stuff 4 bags into there. There might be another bag once a month, maybe once every 2 months if I go around in the basement and collect different items and want to get rid of them. But generally it's 1 bag per week. If you add that 104 to the 254, not the 240 number we were just talking about, it's 358. With the calculation Bill did for his 52% increase, if we just did it with a rate hike, it would be 386. So it'd still be cheaper than just the standard rate hike across the board for a normal single-family home.
Mr. Tisdale?
Yes, Vice Chair Cavey?
Yeah, I've just been crunching the numbers as we've been going through this and adding all the adjustments in. This would be for, I did both seniors and non-seniors, so let's go with the non-senior number. If you use 1 bag, as you described, the total adjustment given the rate reduction would be $344 a month. Or sorry, that would be annually, $344 annually. If we just increased the rate and did nothing else, that's $391. Difference of about $50 annually or so. So a 35% increase. For seniors, it's a 29% increase. Just make sure that, yeah, it's about $50 difference.
And that's if the base state remained the same? At 254, and the new proposal is to reduce that to 240.
Correct. Yeah. So I had the rate reduction, the annual fee for bags, to produce a total adjustment of $90. Then so the new total is $344, which I think, given my own experience. With similar sized family, we produce around 3 or 4 bags a week.
Thank you, Vice Chair KV. The gentleman center closest to the door with the hat.
How you doing? Robert Saville, 693 Central Street. I first want to say we have one of the greatest DPWs that there is, and these guys work their butts off to try to go to this bag system and lose something that we have in our town. I know we have a lot of out-of-town members on the board. I'm not worried about what happens in their town. I'm worried about what's happening in my town, and I'm afraid what's going to happen is we're going to lose what we have. I think a lot of people would pay a little extra to keep things the way that they are because it's something that we're accustomed to. We're the taxpayers in Stoughton. I don't see how tonight, as a board, you can even vote on this with so many questions from the town residents. And the fact that this was just found out about on a Facebook website yesterday, that this vote was coming, I think we don't have enough people here. And I think if this got across the entire town, you would have this down the hall around the corner. Just my 2 cents on it. But I think a lot of people in Stoughton would pay $100 per quarter just to keep our town the way that it is and keep our people. I think that's something for you guys to think of. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Mr. Coulter, and then there's someone online that wanted to make, that has a comment. Okay.
Just a response to the gentleman, perhaps he missed it. On April 13th, we had a public information session on SMAC. We discussed this issue inside and out. We identified it, and we asked the public for feedback. So although you may not have known about it, the public has been giving us feedback. Ma'am, if I may, the public has been giving us feedback since April 13th. Our recommendation was based not only on our analysis, but on substantial public feedback of people who watched, listened to, and responded to our public information hearing. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments, and one at a time, please, because we can't hear. But next in line was someone on the internet, and Ms. Brutinelli, can you let that person in so they can ask their question? You think? The gentleman that had their hand, yes. Oh, David Walsh. Can you hear us?
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair.
Oh, sure.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, perfectly clear.
Great. David Walsh, Precinct 3. One thing, I've been listening to the whole discussion tonight, and I think I would, throw out there that there's been a lot of numbers thrown around. There's been a lot of, look at how this would work out from a financial perspective. I would plead to the select board that they turn around and look at this from a financial perspective and maybe sit back and do an analysis before they make a decision tonight, I guess, on which way to go based on what are the real numbers. I think the townspeople don't know what that number is, and I think that would be my suggestion. So I will leave it at that. Thank you. Over.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. I'm sorry, what was that, Mr. Coulter?
If we need to provide more clarity on the numbers, we're delighted to do that, Madam Chair.
Oh, yes. Why don't you just go through the numbers just once again? Where did we land so we're all on the same pages for all of us that are on attending this meeting?
I might have to reference
Yes,
your math, Steve, for the senior calculation, but for the annual cost, it's going to be $240 for the rate. For seniors, it's going to be 25% less. Steve had the actual number. 25% less. The bag fee is $2 for a 33-gallon bag. $15 bag, it's going to be, what, $1.25? And Bill, did you have anything to add to that for the rate hike?
Well, these aren't real numbers, but these are what we refer to, the town manager and the public works director would refer to as back-of-the-napkin calculations. So 5,262 residents at $240 would be $1,262,880. 1,554 seniors at 75% of that rate would be $180, $279,720. We estimated we were going to pick up 562,068 bags at $2 a piece. Doesn't allow for the lower one. That's $1,124,136. That's enough to break even. So, but you know, we don't know what that third number is. We're not going to know what that third number is until we have a track record. So.
Mrs. Walsh, did you have an opportunity to ask your question?
Well, I'm a little disappointed that two men got to speak twice before I got to speak once. But I wanted to say that years ago I had an illegal dumping problem on my property because most of the farm you can't see from the house. And I called the police, and a police detective tracked the man down, and he got two choices: pay the fine or clean up the mess. And it was all cleaned up and taken care of within 24 hours. So the police are on it, and they've been on it for years. But if you see something, you got to say something. You got to make that phone call.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Okay. I'm checking online again. Once again, I'm looking in the audience for hands, and looks like Ms. Cone, Mr. Cone, and our guest speaker, Missy, had a comment.
I brought up the subject of trust funds, and I'm asking you people, are we going to take anything up on that in the near future in the selectmen meeting? And I know I can give you paperwork on the article for that. And I do feel, lady in the back says, I'm in the process of getting trust funds too. Young people don't have this. When you get up into the ages of 60, 65, your thought changes about, and you're talking about retirement, and especially, God forbid, you lose two members of your family, and your kids are here for 10 years, got to wait for money. And I had it done locally. I used an attorney in Stoughton that's very good, and that's what he recommended to me, and that's what I want to ask. I'd like to benefit in some of that too. I'm 79 years old, and I haven't been able to do this. The people up the water department were very, very cooperative. But if you'd like, I can bring this article to the town manager. You can see it. But it's 33 years old, and trust funds back then, no one even heard, very rarely. Today, they're very, very common in people over 65 years old. So I'd appreciate it if I bring it up, if you'd probably take this up and probably reverse this, so people with trust funds, no one's trying to beat the thing. The executive of this and my trust fund is my wife and I, and a majority of the people use their own name as executive. So we do own the house. That's all I'm asking.
So, Mr. Cone, your question is for consideration because abatements are for seniors that are age 70 and older, and in the individual, the home is in the individual name.
Yes.
Because your home is in the name of an estate, you don't qualify.
Not an estate, it's just in a irrevocable trust.
Irrevocable trust.
And the only thing it's there for, I don't have to probate. And you know when you go into probate court, this could take a long time. It's the only reason I did it, and a reason I was recommended by the local attorney to do this is just so my kids, whatever we have left, they can get right away. We don't have to probate, not to beat the town or anything. And I ask your consideration on that.
Okay. Before you have your clarifying question, Mr. Coulter, Vice Chair Cavey and Mr. Carrera had a comment.
Yeah, Mr. Carrera, I know you raised your hand quicker than I did, so I'll wait until you're done.
I don't think it's a problem to do what Mr. Cohn says because he lives in the house. It'd be another thing if he had a realty trust and he was renting a place. But this is where I had the hang up with the former town manager when I was trying to do the 80 break, giving them either no trash fee or part of a break. And I was told that if anybody had a realty trust, they were not eligible. Anybody that was doing this, I says, but if they live in the house by themselves, it's for protection. There was such an argument that it got to a point where I was told I had to find the funding. And that's not up to me. It was up to the internals to find the money. And I tried to ask and ask and ask, and that's why I was never able to bring it forth to you people to give the break to where the 80-year-old people. But even if he lives in the house, I know these realty trusts, I deal with them every day when I'm working for people. We have to pay you out of the trust. And I'm like, okay. But they live in the house. It's for protection. And even my accountants told me to do it. And I don't think I'm old yet, but maybe I am.
Yeah, my accountants told me to do it too.
Madam
Mr.
Chair, we could...
Who said that? Oh, Mr. Gito.
We could agree to hear this at some later time, but we don't need to determine the answer tonight. So I think that Mr. Cavey was going to move on with some other...
Well, I just wanted to make a very simple comment. Mr. Cohn, I think that your case probably is true of a lot of people, and this should not be slipping through the cracks. You ought to receive the same benefit that others do, seniors do, and I would like to make sure that happens and that other residents like you are able to benefit from this. You have personally given to this town significantly for many, many years, and as well as all of the seniors of our town we've been the beneficiaries of their hard work for decades, and this is a benefit that not only are you entitled to, but it's one that I think is respectful of the time and energy that you've put into the community. So the fact that you aren't currently able to do this, I have a real problem with that personally. I want to make sure that we're able to clear this up.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Cavey. But Mr. Coulter had a clarifying question. In order to move forward, not to make a decision today, but we would have enough information to consider it on another occasion real soon. Mr. Coulter had a question.
Madam Chair, it's a question I ask on behalf of our committee that did this work. Bob, are you talking about a single-family residence that's held in trust? That's what we just caucused on. The committee, not that you need our consensus, but would fully support that amendment should you choose to move it forward now. Madam Chairman, the only thing I'm asking you...
We need a microphone so we can hear you.
The only thing I'm asking for consideration, because once you consider it, you'll see that no one is trying to beat the town. If you live in your house, if it's a realty trust and you're collecting, making a profit, I don't make a profit. The only reason I do it is for my children, and that's all that it is. So I just ask you, would you consider it in the near future? That's all.
So I think the response will be consensus with all my board. We will consider it at a later time. Yes, we will. So can we move forward with the agenda? Oh. Yes, can they, you know who had their hand up. Can you just help facilitate that, Ms. Carrera? Because we cannot see.
Kurt Stankiewicz, 89 Walters Way. I just want to remind everybody that we're literally fighting over $34.25 additional per quarter. We could literally have our same exact trash, our same service for $34.25 per quarter. That's it. I don't understand why this is such a big deal.
Thank you very much.
Ken Arbit, 81 Powell Street. We've spent a lot of time tonight talking about the fees and the bag fees and things like that. For folks that aren't in this room that probably don't have this pamphlet, we haven't even discussed any of the other charges that are in here for these bulk items. So how would anyone who's not in this room know anything on how much a couch would cost, how much a bed would cost? It's in this pamphlet. Is this available to everyone too? I mean, are you voting on this entire pamphlet of bags, rates, fees, and all these couch fees and beds and bathtubs? I mean, it's all in the pamphlet. It hasn't even been discussed.
Thank you very much for your question. I asked that question a little bit earlier. Well, how did they come about? What was their process to do their analysis? So I did ask, and Mr. Coulter responded and led the conversation. Would you like us to clarify? Yes, please clarify, Mr. Coulter.
I'll be happy to respond to how we came up with the numbers. They will not cover our direct cost for picking up a disposable product and bringing it to the C&D facility. All we're trying to do is get as close to our cost as we possibly can. Because we're making up the deficit, the structural deficit through the bags, we don't need to cover all of our costs in picking up material. To the gentleman's question about how we came up with the cost, we called the C&D facility on the Avon-Brockton line. We called the C&D facility on Page Street. We asked what the typical cost was for a couch and a sleeper. I'm sorry? Over the next 3 months, we have a full-time communication tour. Can I answer one question, please, Madam Chair?
Wait just a minute, sir. Just one at a time, and make sure you have a microphone so we can recognize you. Our process is you state your name and your address, and our town clerk, Mrs. Carrera, is the one that's helping facilitate this. We want to be sure we hear everyone's comment because...
So my question is, you're going to vote on this tonight, supposedly, on this pamphlet that's already been made up that's saying going forward you need to now bag in these new bags, and the items, the bulk items, are going to cost you $40, $60 for a mattress, $25 for a box spring. Nobody outside of this room has ever seen this, correct?
Correct. This is a rate hearing. That's part of the rate hearing. The reason we are not implementing the program for 3 months is to go out and educate the public.
But you're still not giving the public an opportunity to look at this and make a choice.
The decision to solve the $1 million structural deficit. Ma'am, may I finish, please?
I didn't say a word, did I?
I'm reading you. That's all I have. Thank you.
You need to give this town more respect, as we are citizens of this town, to be able to know what you guys are planning on doing instead of throwing it down our throats.
Ma'am, I take exception to your term, but I'll still respond to the question. We had a public hearing that we widely advertised. Ma'am, may I finish?
I didn't say anything.
To the town. We widely advertised it in every medium we could possibly think of. We had a public hearing. Dozens of people came here and communicated. I also spoke to the issue at town meeting, very directly, about the need to close this deficit and what we were planning to do, which was publicized widely. We now are not implementing this program today. We're voting on the rate structure so we can now go out and communicate to the public. There are decisions we make every single day on costs that are not put forth to public deliberation. We would never get to make a decision if we did that.
But
so we do the work, ma'am.
Like you think they go up.
We do the work. We spend time to do the analysis. That's what you pay us to do. We give our best work and our best and closest recommendation to the policymakers of the town. And then a decision is made. And out of respect that you spoke of for the citizens, we then go on a road show for 3 months before anything is implemented anywhere. That
But
is out of,
after it's passed, correct?
that is the way business is done
Why don't you
in
do
town
that before
government.
you take a vote?
Excuse me, we wanted to make sure they are presenting to us as well as to you, the citizens that are here and that are online. So we're going to vote to give them the A-OK to start communicating this to other. So there are a number of ways to respond to this when he continues, when this group continues to have information sessions, then, you know, a decision could be changed. Or, and you said you were a town meeting rep, you could petition at or have an article at the town meeting to say, no, because that is our form of government, you want to go in a different direction. But we need to be able to give them the okay to move forward. And we're listening to what all of the citizens have to say. It's more about what you have to say, and then we'll close the public hearing so the select board can deliberate on all the things that we've heard in writing, online, and here in the audience.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Coulter, yes.
By way of comparison, ma'am, our employees just incurred a 28% increase in their health care. 28%.
That's not bad.
And what we did is we told them what the cost was and what our actuarial is requiring us to increase it in order for it to break even. So we then, after we knew what the numbers were, we met with, the numbers became fixed. We then met with every union in the town. It's called the IAC, Insurance Advisory Committee. And we gave them all the facts, as we're going to do in the next 3 months with the citizens. And we're going to explain to them where we are, how we got here, and what we need to do to fix it, and what the implications are of not fixing it. The board would not let us implement it effective immediately. Out of respect for the citizens, we're having an educational tour to do that. We did that with the employees of the town and got unanimous consent from every one of the unions. It's sometimes difficult to get unanimous consent on anything. And with that, we were able to move forward. That 28% goes into effect this week. Not one employee has raised up in protest against what we did because they had all the facts. That's what we're going to do over the next 3 months, out of respect for the community.
And I would also like to add, as I look at the trifold, I just wanted to point out it has draft on the front. And then listening to you, one of the things that we've changed in the presentation, it had annually $254. Well, the consideration in a new proposal is now reduced to $240.
Madam Chair, just a point of information. Yours has a draft. We changed it today, and we put the date on the back.
Okay.
It shows when the last revised copy was. So
Okay.
we do fully intend to, we knew we had to amend it. We haven't gone to print with that yet.
Okay.
That's all internally created.
Yours says draft too, Mr. Carrera?
Draft is draft.
Draft is draft.
That's a draft.
Draft is draft.
Tonight, don't say draft.
Oh, it does not say draft. Ours says draft.
I didn't get the right one, so it's a draft.
It's a draft.
Oh, I'm sorry. We used to have it right across the front. So we put it on the back. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for that.
Oh, yes, Mr. Carrera.
Through you, Madam Chairman, to Tom and everybody else. Out of respect, we did online things to say, what do you want to do with the depot? We bought the depot, nobody had an idea, but we bought it, thank God. Then we bought, that was the granite elephant, then we bought the white elephant, which is the Randolph Savings. What do you want to do with that? We had to put that out online. Then we put something else out online. What do you want to do with the depot again? Why didn't we put this out online and get the endpoint that everybody lives on the computer? Not me, but everybody lives on the computer. So why didn't it go out to them and then they would have got it? I'm going to tell you, I'm not ready to vote on this tonight. If there's a vote called, I'm not ready. I'd like to see one more meeting, and I don't think it's a problem to have one more meeting. We're going to meet on July 4th. Nobody had any respect for anybody who sits here, but we have to have another meeting right after July 4th, which is July 5th. I would have liked to have a breath of fresh air, but we've been meeting every day, every week. So I don't think it's too much to ask to levy what we're going to do here for one more meeting. Give the other residents a chance to come in. If nobody comes in, then we'll know where we stand. There's a lot to soak up tonight. There's a lot of numbers flying around that are going to lighten the bag as you throws you that way. I have some changes. I thought this was draft, which we can still change. I don't care what position it's in. Mine's a draft. I can change it. I don't think the costs on the 2 families and the 3 families are high enough.
So as an option, seeing that it's 10:30 now.
I'd like to just continue.
We can continue, that's one option. We can continue this public hearing, or we can close it.
Well, if you close it, we can't take any input from
That's right.
the public,
So
and I won't do that.
It's the wish of the board.
I think we should do one more open.
One more open? One more, Mr. Gito? One more open? Another open meeting? Or close the public hearing?
My view is different than Scott's, but that's okay. I think that we're going to hear various opinions, and I don't think that that we're going to hear anything different from what we've heard. We'll just hear more of it, and that we either decide that we're going to raise the rates for everybody and not change anything else, or we have a schedule to do things and try to get the program in order, and we can monitor it over the years, and if we need to change the rates next year, we can do that. It's not, we're probably not going to get it to the point where it's like a watch. We're going to get to a point that makes some sense. And I've heard enough to make some sense. And that's where I am, but, other people may have a different view.
Yeah.
Madam Chair. Oh, Vice Chair Cavey.
Yeah, I just would like to weigh in on this as well. I just want to be frank that I know it's appealing to kind of imagine that there's a preconceived decision that everyone's already made. But for whatever it may be worth, I am one of your neighbors, and I actually cared to hear what you had to say, and it weighs heavily on me, and I want to make sure I incorporate it into any decision I make. So this, for me, is like an important part of the process. I respect all of the comments you guys have made, and this has been valuable to me. As far as voting tonight, I really just have to be candid. I'm pretty toasted right now. It's been a long day, and I don't know if I'd be able to really have the kind of deliberation I'd want to have on a topic this important tonight. as far as further public input, I feel less strongly about it. I don't want anybody to feel like, we've gone very long. I wanted to make sure everyone had a chance to speak who wanted to speak, so I could hear all of this. But if we continue the public hearing and we just hear more of the same, and we could do this all night, right? Every night. Unless we're getting some new information. I'm not sure how much value that's going to add, but I also don't want to cut it off too soon. I'll leave that at the chair's discretion, whether we close the public hearing or if we continue it and hear more input. I'm not going to start deliberating on this now or thinking about it. I'd like to meditate on it a little bit and think through all the information we've heard. From both the public and also, the presentation, I think was excellent. It does provide a solution to problems we have. For whatever it may be worth, I do. My main concern at this moment, at this exact time, is that there does not appear to me to be an obvious solution that works well for everybody. We can. The one thing we do know is that we have to reduce the subsidy. There's really no way around that. And so our options are to either increase the cost significantly to everybody across the board, or to find some other solution to have to manage those costs. Well, as I said, I'm toast. So the truth is, at this point, I'm afraid I'm going to start rambling. I really think we need to.
Thank you, Vice Chair Cavey. Before we make a decision, one more, Mr. Delinsky, and then we're going to make a decision. And
yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. George Delinsky, Precinct 2, 58 Chapman Road. And looking at this alleged or mock draft brochure, I would suggest that this thing be reprinted with the new rates that were discussed, the 240 versus the 254, et cetera. And I would also respectfully request that a reconsideration of at least a 50% reduction of the fee schedule that's in here for the pickup. It'll make it, I think, a little bit more palatable. And if one of these things could be reproduced and mailed to every household, that would be a little bit more informative instead of putting something out on a computer, which I don't use that often, and when I do, it goes kablooey anyway. But that's my suggestion. I would appreciate it if you would take that under consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Delinsky. Okay, so it's pretty late in the evening. It's 10:39, and I've heard from Mr. Gito, Vice Chair Cavey, Mr. Carrera, and I know Mr. McCrisky is still on the line. I know he's not feeling well. But with that said, I would suggest under consideration that we continue this public hearing for another dated time, but only hear comments that are new and different. Then we close the public hearing, we deliberate, and then make our decision. But continue from tonight so we can hear new information and process what the information that we've heard tonight.
All right, I'll make a motion,
yes,
Madam Chairman, to continue the hearing to the next date, which would be Tuesday the 20th at 7 o'clock. And what's that? At Stoughton Town. Yeah, at Stoughton, 10 Pearl Street, Stoughton Town Hall.
So today is, wait just a minute. I'm thinking about holidays. So tonight is Thursday night. Will we have time to meet because Monday is the holiday. Oh, yeah. Too late for Tuesday.
The Tuesday agenda has already been posted.
Okay, Tuesday agenda has already been posted. So would it?
Can be amended.
Correct.
You do it all the
But I don't know
time.
if we have time. You won't be here next week.
Surgery, yeah.
So
somebody give me a day.
Mr. Calter won't be here next week. We have Monday is the holiday. We have Tuesday's agenda was posted, so we could do the following week.
That's fine.
Okay, the following week as a continuation of.
What date would that be, Kate?
We're not doing this on July 4th.
So July 4th we're closed, so you could do it if.
whichever your next.
July 5th, is that agenda posted as well?
That's a Wednesday.
June 27th also is Tuesday.
June 27th?
Will Tom be here? Will Tom be here?
Tom, we do want Tom to be present. We know
If it means that much to you,
he will be here
show up.
on the 27th. So that's another off-schedule meeting.
Can I just ask that it's fine to redo that, but is there a way we can get this pamphlet, like maybe in the town shopper, something, so people are able to see what the actual proposal is?
So,
Because
yeah.
most people don't, a lot of my neighbors didn't know anything about this.
The agenda to, just for, if you want to have a copy for yourself to be able to share, I mean, we can distribute it other ways, but the agenda to this meeting on the town website has this attached to the agenda. No, I understand. I'm telling you, if, like, for example, if you wanted to start distributing a copy now, like, that's available to you. We will find a way to distribute it to people as well.
Yeah, that's all I was asking.
Yeah.
May I suggest, we'll make these edits first thing in the morning based upon what we've discussed, and we'll put them right on the website so that they can be copied and distributed. It would be pretty expensive to mail to everybody. We'd mail them to every town
I
meeting
think they
member.
should get one up on SMAC.
Yeah, that would be good.
Will we need to have all the people present who presented as well, so that the new people that come in will have the benefit of the discussion that occurred, that sort of informed the public?
Well, maybe we could lead them to our meeting that has been taped by SMAC, because one of the things that stood out to me, what Ms. Pat Colburn said, was presentation 2 hours into our meeting, and then the citizens finally had an opportunity to ask their questions. So we could lead the other citizens to our meeting so they can have the benefit of hearing what our guests had to say. But if they are available to attend, because there may be new questions that the citizens might want to ask, I think that would be great. So that would be Missy and, what is it, Missy, Mark, and Bob. That's right. So what day did we land on? Was that the 27th?
Yes.
27th of June. So that...
I'll enter that as the motion.
That'll be... At 7 o'clock? At
Yes.
7 p.m.?
At 10 Pearl Street Town Hall.
Second.
All in favor, and we're taking a roll call vote. Mr. Gito?
No.
Mr. Gito says no. Vice Chair Cavey?
Yes.
Mr. Carrera?
Yes.
Mr. McCrisky, are you still...
Yes.
Okay, and I vote yes as well. Thank you, and...
Make a
have
motion
good-
to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, Mr. Gito? This is to adjourn the meeting. Motion to adjourn has been seconded. Are you in favor? Vice Chair Cavey to adjourn. Mr. Carrera to adjourn.
Yes.
Mr. McCrisky to adjourn. And I vote yes as well. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you so much.